The story begins in the throes of desperation. Our protagonist stands on the brink of collapse, his body screaming in agony. Yet, a demanding voice cuts through the haze, ordering him to hurry up and steal the curse devouring Lord Arthur. Pushed beyond his absolute limit, our guy doesn't falter. With gritty determination, he vows to extract the curse right this second. Mana flares to life around him. This exhausted soul is Crash Wall. Though born into the mightiest bloodline in existence, he is branded as its greatest failure. Summoning the last dregs of his strength, he completes the incantation. The forbidden technique, Blackhood, erupts from his hands to strike the curse binding Arthur. The effect is instantaneous. With a resounding crack, the malicious curse shatters into nothingness. But this power comes at a price. It is a technique specifically forged for a single, dark purpose: to steal curses from others. Crash forces every ounce of that vile negative energy into his own body. In truth, this so-called failure is a hidden hero of the legendary Blue Sky generation. The moment Arthur is freed, his allies rush to his side, pouring potions down his throat, while Crash is left abandoned in the dirt. Suddenly, Arthur's gaze locks onto the heavens, spotting a skeletal knight hovering above. The undead monster glares down with hollow eyes, radiating death. Without a moment's hesitation, it hurls a massive fireball, instantly obliterating a nearby mountain. Arthur stares at the destruction, his spirit trembling. He wonders if they are really going to fight the Blue Knight of D's. With their depleted forces, the hero throws his sword to the earth, declaring victory impossible. Resigning himself to fate, he calls out to his loyal companions. Sigron, Abella, and Mary gather around their fallen leader. The women embrace Lord Arthur, accepting their doom. Watching this pathetic display, our protagonist is struck with utter confusion. He demands to know what the hell is happening. Arthur simply replies that he is choosing to end it all right here and now. Crash watches in horror as the world's last hope extinguishes before his eyes. All that remains is absolute ruin. Rage boils within him. How dare they simply surrender? Does the hero have any concept of the mountains of corpses piled up to get them this far? Crash spits out the bitter truth. Countless brave souls met their end, all while Arthur was busy chasing skirts and playing hero. Suddenly, a sharp voice cuts him off. It is Sigronia, the third princess of the Empire. She fiercely defends Arthur, claiming he did his absolute best. Her eyes burn with disdain as she calls Crash a piece of trash. She mocks him as a tool useful only for stealing, warning him not to lecture his betters. Our protagonist is stunned by the girl's sheer audacity. The insult snaps something inside him. He reaches out, trembling with fury. How dare they speak to their savior that way? He roars that without his ability, they would have been corpses long ago. Since they seem to have forgotten, he decides to refresh everyone's memory. He starts with Abella. This woman is the Red Witch of the Blue Sky generation, a prodigy of the Magic Tower. Crash reminds her cold-bloodedly that a mage who cannot speak cannot cast spells. Yet, time and time again, she demanded he steal the curses, silencing her voice. He recalls the agony of bearing her curse. And how did she repay him? She attacked him when he merely sought painkillers to dull the torment. Even now, facing death, her arrogance remains untouched. She still looks down on everyone from her pedestal. From there, his burning gaze shifts to the Empire's strongest spear, Mary Deanna Fane. Our protagonist describes her as a muscle-brained fool. She would stumble into every trap, then crawl to him, sobbing and begging for him to extract the curses. Next, he turns to the princess who called her savior trash, even after he sacrificed his own eyes for her. He asks Sigron if she has any concept of the hell he endured. He remembers the academy days. She tormented him relentlessly simply because he hailed from the Starland Kingdom faction. Because of that, he was beaten bloody. They mocked him, calling him a failure who couldn't even lift a finger to defend himself. They questioned his bloodline, doubting he was a true Wallheim, yet Crash swallowed the humiliation and healed her blindness. He reveals why he endured such torture, because Sigron was a member of the Blue Sky generation, the solitary hope for this doomed world. She was the shining hero. He accepted his role as the kingdom's disgrace, a talentless failure unfit for battle. He screams out the question haunting his soul. What was the point of cleaning up their messes for so long? Perhaps with anyone else, failure was inevitable. But with Arthur, with the Chosen One, they should have been able to save this world. Our protagonist thinks back to their first meeting. He admired Arthur, even knowing the man was leading a band of fools. Crash saw him standing tall on the front lines of the blue sky generation. In that moment, he swore to follow him into hell. Returning to the bleak present, the young man demands to know why Arthur is surrendering so easily. The hero looks up, his eyes cold. He decides to finally speak the truth. Since this world is already finished, he reveals his plan to reset everything to the beginning. Our protagonist, is completely floored by the concept of erasing existence itself. Arthur confirms the nightmare. This isn't the first time he has watched the world burn. He reveals his true ability, regression. Crash stands there, his jaw hitting the floor. The hero continues his chilling explanation, revealing that he acquired a memory. It is an inheritance technique, a secret art allowing the three girls to regress alongside him while keeping their memories intact. Crush processes this information, his mind racing. If the entire party starts over with their current experience, the tactical advantage is immense. The probability of preventing the apocalypse in the next life would skyrocket. That was Arthur's master plan all along. Then, Arthur drops the bombshell. He declares he is restarting the world with only the three girls by his side. Crush freezes, his blood running cold. With a trembling voice, he asks the inevitable question, "What happens to me?" A cruel smile twists Arthur's face. The crush is no longer needed. The words hit our protagonist like a physical blow. Arthur explains with cold logic. Crush's Blackhood ability had one use stealing powerful curses that were otherwise unbreakable. But why bring a broken tool to a new world? He questions the point of regressing with Crush when his body and mind are shattered beyond repair. Therefore, Arthur shrugs. It is simply more efficient to discard him. He will just acquire a fresh, clean version of Crush in the next timeline. Finally, the protagonist understands he was nothing but a disposable tool. The realization strikes deep. Arthur had planned to throw him away from the very beginning. The so-called hero even offers a twisted comfort. "Don't worry, I will use you again in the next life, and the one after that." With a cold goodbye, he turns away. "We will meet again." As Arthur and the girls begin to fade into light, the young man screams for them to wait. As he reaches out to the fading light, a bitter truth settles in his heart. He had known it all along. If Arthur had truly considered him a companion, he never would have stood by and watched while the others treated Crush like dirt. Desperation takes over. Crush screams for Arthur to take him along, but his consciousness is already beginning to drift into the void. He realizes the grim reality. At this rate, his life will extinguish before the world even finishes destroying itself. Faced with absolute death, a spark ignites in the young man's eyes. He refuses to let it end like this. It turns out, his Blackhood ability is not limited to curses. It can steal skills from others, though the difficulty is nearly impossible. He never dared use it on Arthur before, but now it is worth the risk. The young man activates his ultimate technique. His target is locked to Arthur, who is vulnerable in the middle of the regression process. Suddenly, a giant hand of shadow erupts. Grasping the hero, Crush watches in shock as the dark ability begins draining Arthur's power. Success. The technique transfers directly to Crush's hand. The hero's eyes go wide in disbelief. "You still haven't given up, The young man reveals the hidden horror. Arthur has already looped through countless destructions before this one, and every single time, he left Crush behind in a dying world simply because he became useless. How many times has he felt this same despair? But he delivers a final warning. This time, Arthur, it is your turn to be left behind. The hero wonders if the young man has finally lost his mind. Crush just smiles through the pain. Maybe you are right. He throws Arthur's own philosophy back at him. You were the one who said this world was destined for ruin. Realization crashes down. Crush is hijacking the regression skill. Arthur is completely bewildered. The hero cannot believe this is happening. The protagonist roars his declaration. I will be the one to save the next world. The world dissolves into blinding light. Slowly, consciousness returns. His eyes snap open. The regression. It worked. He feels small, yet his memories are razor sharp. The boy looks around, trying to grasp his new reality. Recognition floods in. He knows this place intimately. It is the house where he lived as a little kid. A blue notification window appears. Regression complete. Crash Wallheim is now 13 years old. Immediately, the lore comes rushing back. World erosion, a catastrophic phenomenon where reality is corroded by another dimension. Because of this, the environment twists and warps. The terrifying erosion species begin their invasion. The worst among them look frighteningly human. These are the commanders, the most dangerous monsters of all. Humanity gave them a name, the World Eroders. When they appear in a city, chaos reigns supreme. Civilians run for their lives, screaming for the night orders to save them. That is when the defenders step in. With weapons drawn and magic flaring, they prepare for war. And so, the battle against the Eroders begins. These heroes are the legendary Blue Sky generation. And our protagonist remembers he was one of them. But the truth is bitter. He only joined their ranks because his body was a vessel capable of sealing curses. In the end, he was treated like a human lightning rod, betrayed by his companions and left to rot, a truly miserable existence. Shaken by the terrible memory, crushed gasps, waking up startled in his bed, he scans his surroundings frantically, but his heart slows. It is just his old room. Confusion swirled in his mind like a blizzard. Just a heartbeat ago, he was freezing in the dead of winter. Yet now the heat was suffocating, and sweat poured down his face. His eyes darted around, taking in the familiar architecture. There was no mistake. He was back in the Azure Pine Mansion, the very place he called home during his childhood. A realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. His final, desperate gamble had actually worked. He had successfully used the Blackhood to steal the regression skill from the hero, Arthur. A laugh bubbled up from his throat, pure disbelief coloring his tone. But as the euphoria faded, a nagging question remained. How in the world did he manage to steal such a god-tier technique? He knew the common misconception well. Most people believe Blackhood was an omnipotent skill that could be used without restriction. But the truth was far more complex. To steal from a target using Blackhood, one had to bypass a security lock. This lock generated the instant the skill was activated. And the strength of this lock wasn't random. It was directly determined by the value the owner placed on the target being stolen. It didn't matter if it was a diamond or a roadside pebble. If the owner cherished it, the difficulty of breaking the lock skyrocketed to absurd levels. Therefore, stealing something as precious as a signature skill should have been exponentially difficult. It should have been impossible. He concluded that for a skill of that magnitude, the conditions required to break the lock should have been insurmountable. The difficulty should have been infinite. His mind drifted back to that final confrontation. He thought of Arthur and wondered what was going through the hero's mind in those last moments. He knew for a fact that Blackhood had activated. Yet, he searched his memory and found nothing. There was no lock to unlock. The absence of a lock led to only one chilling conclusion. Arthur didn't cherish the skill. In fact, he desperately wanted to get rid of the regression ability. Shock froze him in place. The great king of heroes, the idol of the world, wanted to throw away his most powerful weapon. But then, the pieces started to fit. He remembered Arthur's expressions. The look of complete exhaustion. The hollow eyes of someone just going through the motions. Repeating a timeline doomed to destruction, over and over again, completely alone. There was no way anyone could keep their sanity intact. To Arthur, the power of regression wasn't a blessing. It was a curse he couldn't escape. That explained everything. Arthur planned to transfer his memories to the three girls and regress with them, deliberately excluding our protagonist from the equation. The fact that the protagonist managed to steal the skill with Blackhood only confirmed the grim reality. The Arthur he knew had lost his immortality. He was left behind in that dying world, colliding with the meteor shower of the blue night of Deis. That hero was gone forever. Our protagonist's eyes darkened. He muttered that he had simply taken the trash Arthur wanted to throw away. In fact, the hero should be thanking him for relieving him of such a burden. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. He remembered the pain of the past, how he was always ostracized, always the outcast of the group. They acted as if absorbing curses was a trivial task, never sparing a glance for the companion suffering right in front of their eyes. The despair and physical agony he felt back then crashed over him again. The memories burned. A vengeful glint sharpened his gaze. You deserved it, Arthur. He spat into the empty room. You absolute piece of trash. Back in the present, he stood in the hallway of the Azure Pine Mansion. He faced a mirror, staring at his reflection. A A 10-year-old boy looked back, small in stature but with surprising muscle definition. This physique was the result of pure desperation. The product of swinging a sword every single day just to survive in the Wallheim family, the strongest martial house in the Starland Kingdom. Based on his appearance and location, the timeline became clear. If he was in the Azure Pine Mansion, it had to be right after the trial ceremony held at age 10. The Wallheim family ceremony was the ultimate proving ground. It was an event to display one's strength, discover which god would grant a contract, and determine what skill would be bestowed. The equation was simple: the more excellent the contractor, the higher the rank of the god. That was why the direct line of the Wallheim family was revered above all else. However, our protagonist was the sole stain on that legacy. Born with zero martial talent, no god deigned to choose him. The consequences were swift. He was expelled from the main house and exiled to the Azure Pine Mansion, the dumping ground for the family's failures. But the irony was palpable. Now, only he, the greatest failure in Wallheim history, knew the truth of the coming apocalypse. He knew of an ending so catastrophic that not even the legendary Blue Sky generation could prevent it. He gazed out the window, the weight of the future pressing down on him. Could he stop the end of the world? A horrific vision of destruction flashed before his eyes. Weakness threatened to consume him, but he clenched his fist until his knuckles turned white. "Don't complain," he told himself sternly. It wasn't a question of ability. It was a necessity. If the world was destroyed, he would go down with it. He had to stop it to survive. Determination flooded his veins. There was no other option. He had to rewrite destiny. His mind began to race, planning the first step to prevent the destruction, but suddenly, the sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. A butler appeared, bowing politely. "Young master." The protagonist recognized him immediately. It was Ariado. Surprise flickered across his face at this point in the story. The man was still alive. This was the only butler in the desolate mansion, the only person who had ever taken care of him, despite his status as a failure. However, a cold memory surfaced, chilling him to the bone. He remembered the truth. It was this very butler who had handed him the poison in his past life. He recalled the moment vividly, asking the traitor a single question: "When exactly did you plan to use it?" This is the face of the man who forced poison down his throat at 14, the architect of his life's first agonizing betrayal. But before the darkness takes hold, the scene shifts to a glimpse of blinding power. A lone girl stands against a behemoth. With a single devastating strike, she crushes the giant monster, leaving the audience completely breathless. The Colosseum erupts in shock. Two observers gasp, noting that at a mere 15 years old, she possesses a might that veteran knights can't even hope to touch. This is Charlotte Wall, our protagonist's older half-sister. She looks completely bored, a terrifying testament to why she bears the legendary title of Sword Saint. The nobles whisper in awe. She is a prodigy born only once every 1,000 years. The sole reason the family head has placed the weight of the clan's future on her shoulders. Watching from the shadows is Baron Wall, Crash's older half-brother. The praises sting his ears, words about a new genius saving the family from ruin. Pure, unadulterated hatred twists Baron's face. In the dark recesses of his mind, a vow forms he will annihilate that entire cursed bloodline. The gears of malice begin to turn. He realizes Charlotte is too dangerous a target, and her mother is a formidable obstacle in her own right. He needs a softer target. His malicious gaze shifts, settling on the only remaining option: the family's useless, discarded failure. We return to the nightmare of the past. Baron corners Ariado, a malicious grin stretching across his face as he reveals his plan to dispose of young Master Crash. He begins to weave his web of manipulation. He lies to the loyal butler, claiming that his own path to glory is being blocked by our protagonist's mere existence. Then comes the devil's offer. Baron holds out a vial of lethal poison, promising that a single drop in Crash's food will pay for Ariado's daughter's medical bills and solve all his debts. Ariado is torn apart inside. He raised the young master from infancy, loving him as if he were his own flesh and blood. How could he possibly commit such an atrocity? Sensing weakness, Baron strikes. His voice drops to a chilling whisper as he backs the butler into a corner. Do you intend to choose someone else's son over your own daughter? Trapped between hell and despair, the butler breaks. He lowers his head in utter defeat and whispers the answer Barone wants to hear. The pact is sealed in blood. The poison is slipped into the food. The scene shifts to that tragic memory, where our protagonist's hand trembles uncontrollably. The memory burns vivid and cruel. He remembers finding Ariado collapsed on the floor, a knife plunged deep into his own chest. With his life force fading, the butler uses his last breath to beg for forgiveness. He apologizes to young Master Crash for the unforgivable sin. Tears stream down the young man's face. Despite the betrayal, the heartbreak is real. He had always seen the butler as his true father. Ariado's bloodied hand goes limp, lifeless against the stone. Our protagonist is left alone with the corpse, crushing guilt weighing on his soul. It is revealed that in the original timeline, Ariado couldn't bear the guilt. He consumed the poisoned stew himself, choosing death to escape his shame. Snap back to the present reality. The butler tries to play the fool, feigning ignorance, but our protagonist cuts through the lies. He stares him down, revealing that he knows exactly why Ariado is doing this. It's for his sick daughter. The color drains from the man's face. Crash asks a piercing question. Did you really think such a clumsy plot would remain a secret forever? But Crash stops. He realizes that pushing too hard will only drive the loyal man into a corner again. It is time for a different approach. He steps back, his voice softening. If I hadn't been such a failure, he admits, Ariado would never have received such an order. The butler freezes, utterly confused. He braced himself for screaming and rage. He never expected the young master to handle a murder attempt with such terrifyingly calm maturity. Crash turns, a new aura of authority surrounding him. Instead of punishment, he extends a hand, commanding Ariado to follow. The butler is left reeling at this transformation. Then comes a bizarre command. Standing before a dead end, Crash tells Ariado to cut through the solid wall. The old man blinks, his confusion deepening by the second. Our protagonist smirks. For a warrior of the ducal house of Wallheim, he challenges, this should be child's play. Ariado straightens, his pride ignited. No more time is wasted. The butler shifts into a stance, a powerful aura rising from his body as his grip tightens on the sword hilt. Slash. A precise, devastating cut cleaves the stone. It's so clean that even Crash is impressed as the rubble falls away to reveal a hidden passage. Ariado stares into the darkness, shocked that a path actually exists. Crash merely nods, congratulating him on a job well done. The butler gazes at the boy's back. This isn't the weak child he knew. This is someone entirely different. He wonders if the boy has been training in secret. The pressure radiating from him now rivals even that of the family head. They arrive at a heavy door, bound tight with rusted chains and a massive padlock. Crash pauses, wondering what history lies buried here, but he shakes his head. There is no time to dwell on the ghosts of the past. In his previous life, a fire turned this place to ashes. But this time, he has defied fate and arrived before the tragedy could strike. Ariado steps forward to cut the chains, but Crash raises a hand to stop him. No, he says calmly, your blade won't work here. His eyes sharpen with determination. It is time to test his new limits. He invokes his dark power, the Blackhood ability. Shadows swirl with zero effort. Crash shatters the heavy padlock and chains. The metal snaps like twigs, leaving the butler dumbfounded by this monstrous strength. Did you make a pact with the god? Ariado gasps. Crash just smiles, remarking that his skills haven't gone rusty after all. He realizes he is walking a tightrope with no safety net. In truth, he hasn't formed a single spirit contract yet. But he decides to gamble everything on a bluff, sneering that he made a pact with a worthless god and daring the butler to run and tattle to his father. The butler stands frozen, utterly shocked by the young master's sudden audacity and commanding presence. Just yesterday, the boy's eyes were dead and hollow, but overnight, he is completely transformed as if reborn by divine power. Ariado begins to calculate. Perhaps this fierce new version of the boy can achieve greatness, even if he never rivals his genius sister, Charlotte. A shift occurs in the servant's demeanor, and with a determined smile, he solidifies his resolve. He bows deeply to our protagonist, acknowledging him as the true young master, and swears a vow of silence until the boy's objective is complete. Our protagonist instantly recognizes the ripple effect. This is the double-edged sword of regression. By altering his choices, the timeline shifts, and the variables surrounding Ariado are changing in real time. However, he cannot let his guard down. The memory of this very butler betraying him in the previous life is burned into his soul. He muses that perhaps Arthur allowed him to steal the regression ability for this purpose to secure loyalty by curing the butler's dying daughter. With a cold strategy in mind, he decides to expand his collection of disposable pawns. He dismisses Ariado with a wave, telling him to act as he pleases, deciding to deal with the daughter's cure once his power is secured. The priority is the power sleeping within the secret library. He throws the doors open, and a blinding, intense glow explodes from within. The air grows heavy instantly, saturated with a terrifying and potent energy. The pressure is crushing, enough to steal the breath from his lungs, even after surviving the world erosion's curses. This chill is unlike anything he has ever felt. His instincts scream that the secret manual he seeks lies at the heart of this storm. Suddenly, a shelf erupts with a fiery, sinister aura, and he realizes his prize is waiting among books radiating dark energy. This is the forbidden archive of the Azure Pine Pavilion, the graveyard where the Wallheim family's failed ancestors left their twisted legacies. These techniques were not gifts from the gods, but the desperate, blood-soaked products of human obsession. It was a repository of madness holding the keys to reaching the absolute pinnacle of martial strength. Originally open to all, it was sealed shut because of one man, Valhis Diaris Wallheim, an ancestor whose very memory radiates intimidation. In the annals of history, he was mocked as the absolute worst failure of the Wallheim bloodline. Yet, after being consumed by the world erosion, he emerged as the single strongest entity in existence. Driven by that legend, our protagonist steps forward to claim the forbidden manual left by this monster. As his fingers graze the binding, a triumphant grin spreads across his face. The manual of Diaris Wallheim, the failure who became a god, is finally his. Centuries ago, when Diaris unleashed this power, the world's greatest martial artists united to challenge him. But Diaris stood unmoved, releasing his energy and crushing every challenger with overwhelming, absolute force. In the end, he stood alone and invincible, wielding the terrifying technique known as extreme blood poison. To harness this devastation, he had absorbed the world erosion itself, using a secret madness art to shackle the chaotic force. Since the records were partially burned in his past life, our protagonist never understood why Diaris eventually succumbed to insanity. But now the truth clicks into place. The ancestor fell because he could not contain the boundless rage of the erosion. Flashbacks hit him. He remembers utilizing the Blackhood ability to neutralize the world erosion curse with a counter curse. A revelation strikes like lightning. He can apply the exact same principle to control the rage of the extreme blood poison. Our protagonist realizes that by stealing a curse specifically designed to control rage, he can neutralize the backlash. The two curses will clash in a violent confrontation of opposing energies, creating a blast of light and a perfect, stable equilibrium. With this breakthrough, he knows with absolute certainty that he can rival, or even surpass, the legendary strength of Diaris. Surging with confidence, he barks a command for Ariado, and the butler materializes instantly at his side. Our protagonist issues his first absolute decree from this moment on. The Azure Pine Mansion is a fortress, and no soul is permitted to enter. The butler bows, understanding the gravity of the command, and departs to enforce his master's will without a second thought. As he walks away, Ariado reflects on the mercy he was shown. The young master spared him, and a debt of honor must be paid. His resolve hardens. He will reject Baroin's offer, for he now serves only one true lord, the young master. Meanwhile, Baroin explodes in a volcanic rage upon hearing of the servant's refusal, furious that he was rejected for a useless piece of trash. He glares at a news article featuring Charlotte, his hatred boiling over for both the celebrated genius and the forgotten failure. Baroin curses their existence, lamenting that if not for that woman's dirty blood, he and his sister Lilish would control the direct bloodline unchallenged. Beside him, the girl mirrors his disdain, her scorn fueling the young man's humiliation until he grinds his teeth in sheer frustration. Unable to contain his temper, he bellows for a servant, who scrambles to answer the young master's summons. Baroin barks a sharp order: go to the Azure Pine Mansion immediately and discover why that traitorous butler has suddenly changed his allegiance. But the servant returns with impossible news: they are barred from entry. Baroin stands there, completely dumbfounded. The trembling servant explains that Ariado has sealed the entrance, vowing to stop even the family head. Furious, Baroin curses our protagonist as nothing more than an arrogant failure. Meanwhile, deep within the silence of the library, Our protagonist sits in meditation, focusing every ounce of his spiritual energy. He exhales slowly, releasing a breath of violet aura. Clenching his fist, he wonders if he has finally broken through to the expert realm. In this world, power is absolute. The path begins as an aura user, rising to expert, ascending to master, and peaking at the legendary Emperor stage. The second stage, the expert level, is a crucial threshold. It demands a massive reserve of aura, standing as the insurmountable wall dividing commoners from true geniuses. He reflects that while he has just stepped out of mediocrity, his sister Charlotte, only 2 years his senior, is already touching the realm of an arrow master. In his past life, she was a true monster. Yet, even a prodigy like Charlotte was helpless against the coming destruction. She fell in battle, leaving nothing but desolation amidst the chaos of the apocalypse. Compared to her memory, he is merely a fledgling expert. A heavy question weighs on him. Can he truly protect the world at this pace? He lowers his head, burdened by the impossible mission ahead. But he quickly steels his resolve. He will never know the limit unless he pushes past it. Memories of his past life surface, a time when a wretched curse prevented him from manifesting even a wisp of aura. But destiny has been rewritten. Though he cannot yet rival Charlotte, he holds a secret manual left behind by a failure just like him, a key to infinite growth. A determined smile sharpens his features. He knows, without a doubt, that he will ascend to heights previously unimaginable. For now, this strength is enough to begin. Suddenly, Arioto approaches, bowing with respect to congratulate his master on reaching the expert level. Our protagonist simply grabs a towel, dismissing the praise. As he wipes away the sweat of his training, he asks why the butler was guarding the gate. The old man bows low and drops a bombshell. The young master's fiancée, Lady Bianca Harden, has arrived at the Azure Pine Mansion. The news strikes our protagonist like a thunderclap. Instantly, a nightmare flashes in his mind. Bianca, the white demon, a pawn of the world eroders who sought to annihilate existence, slaying one of the 10 great heavens. However, he forces his racing heart to calm. That future has not yet come to pass. In this timeline, she is merely the youngest daughter of the Harden family. Looking toward the gate, he sees not a demon, but a girl caught in a web of political marriage. It is a calculated trade. The Wallheim family discards a failure, while the Harden clan of the North secures a tie to the strongest martial family. A cynical realization hits him. They are both merely pawns being moved by their families for convenience. Yet, fate works in mysterious ways. He needed to find her anyway, and now she's walked right into his lair. Thus, the stage is set for Bianca Harden, the daughter of the northern rulers, born from a mother afflicted by world erosion. From her very first breath, the innocent girl was ravaged by a plague known as the Snow Doll. The curse dug deep, infecting her very soul and becoming a shackle impossible to shatter. With her body tainted by this frost, she was denied the right to form a contract with a god. A cursed child, born at the cost of her mother's life. She faced a frozen existence of neglect from her own kin. Our protagonist wonders if hate has already taken root in her heart. He hopes her resentment won't hinder him. He plans to steal her affliction, for the Snow Doll curse is the only antidote to the extreme blood poison raging within him. Realizing his appearance is disheveled from training, Crash pauses. Arioto immediately senses his need, offering to fetch fresh attire. Our boy thanks the loyal butler with a faint, knowing smile. He instructs the old man to escort their guest inside and ensure she is comfortable while he prepares. The scene shifts to 5 months in the past. A furious Crash shoves Bianca, screaming at her to leave, accusing her of coveting the Wallheim power. The girl stands silent, her eyes cast down, absorbing his venomous words without a single retort. Mercilessly, he kicks her out of the room, but in her silence, she screams internally she is not here by choice. A flashback reveals her father's cold decree for the Harden family to survive. They must sell her beauty to the Wallheims. Her mission was simple: seduce the youngest son, a task deemed easy for one of her looks. He placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, burdening her with the fate of the entire house. Even without emotions, she knew the cruelty of her duty. If not for the chains of a political marriage, she would never deign to look at a cynical, foul-mouthed loser like Crash. She hesitates for a heartbeat, but her resolve hardens. She will be the one to sever this engagement. Back in the present, regret washes over our protagonist. He realizes just how cruel and cold he had been to her in his previous life. fully dressed. He attempts to break the icy atmosphere. He scoffs that the maid serves scalding tea to someone with a sensitive tongue like hers, promising to have a stern word with them later. The girl, however, simply stares at him. Dead silence. She shows zero reaction to his attempt at lightness. Desperate. The boy suggests a stroll in the garden, mentioning the rare flowers that never bloom in the frozen north. Without missing a beat, he calls for Arioto and orders him to bring macadamia nut cookies to the garden immediately, and the butler bows, obeying promptly. As they stroll down the corridor, our protagonist remarks on her arduous journey. He adds that, as betrothed partners, their paths will cross far more often now. She offers only a curt confirmation. Crash sighs, noting that her tone sounds less like a fiancé and more like a commanding officer addressing a subordinate. Bianca continues to gaze at him in silence, her mind racing to process this anomaly. Something is definitely wrong. In her memories of their last meeting, his gaze was sharp enough to cut glass, but today he seems like a completely changed man. Furthermore, a suspicion arises she never once told him that she loved macadamia nut cookies. In the garden, the boy remarks on the tranquility of the scenery, but the girl cuts him off, her expression hardening into absolute seriousness. She demands to know if he is truly Crash. The two lock eyes in a suffocating moment of tension, heavy doubt hanging in the air between them. Our protagonist feels the awkwardness of her blunt interrogation. He asks if he really seems so different, but in his fluster, he accidentally leaks his aura. Terror strikes the girl as she feels that sinister energy wash over her. She trembles, wondering what this overwhelming bloodlust could possibly be. Terrified, she bows deeply, apologizing for speaking out of turn. Meanwhile, the boy panics internally. Intimidation was never his intention. He realizes his memories of this specific timeline are hazy. He can't quite recall exactly how poorly he treated her back then. However, one single fragment remains crystal clear. The only vivid memory is the look on her face. It was the exact same expression she wore on the day she met her tragic end in front of the North Sea Pavilion in his past life. He decides he needs a plausible excuse, fast. He claims her fear is natural, as he recently formed a contract with a deity, altering his presence. The girl seems to accept this logic, assuming the divine contract warped his personality. She stiffly congratulates him on such a legendary achievement. Seizing the momentum, he announces he has a proposal for her. The girl is wary, wondering what a man who contracted a god could possibly want from her. The first thought that crosses her mind is the annulment of their engagement. Our protagonist is indignant, asking why on earth she would jump to such a drastic conclusion. The boy then begins to belittle himself, admitting he understands if she has no desire to marry a wretch like him. The girl watches him spiral into self-deprecation again. She wonders why a noble of the Wallheim bloodline would possess such cripplingly low self-esteem. With a steel-cold expression, the young woman interrupts him. She affirms that she is his fiancée, and that fact will not change, no matter what. Our protagonist is visibly moved by her steadfast declaration. He wonders when the last time was that he heard words so sincere and unshakable. He shakes his head to regain his composure. It is time to get straight to the point. He reveals his true intent with his newly awakened ability. He wants to absorb her snowdoll curse. The girl is stunned by the proposal. She cannot believe he intends to tackle a curse that even the continent's most famous curse breakers failed to remove. She asks if he plans to take the burden onto himself. Crash confirms, offering her any wish in return, including the annulment of their engagement. Meanwhile, the young woman calculates that having no emotions is actually an advantage, as she knows Crash is treated as a failure. And because of his status, there must be a deep chasm separating him from the direct family line. Perhaps he is simply exhausted by his tragic life, to the point of wanting to erase his own emotions entirely. The girl looks at the boy with a mix of pity and confusion, wondering if this is a symptom of severe mental illness. She recalls the words of a mental-type mage she once met. When a person reaches their mental breaking point, the mind shatters. Such people may end their own lives or suddenly become terrifyingly gentle, as if they are a completely different person. The young woman remembers the mage's grave warning. These moments are dangerous. These behavioral shifts are signs of an imminent end. If someone close reaches that stage, one must stay by their side to save them. Back in the present, Bianca firmly grasps Crash's hand. She tells him he doesn't need a curse to numb his pain or control his emotions. She is certain he can overcome this darkness. Our protagonist is completely flushed by her sudden warmth. He stammers, trying to explain that she is misunderstanding the entire situation. The girl, however, ignores his protests. She declares she will visit frequently, perhaps even move next door, leaving the boy even more bewildered by this turn of fate. He searches her gaze, asking if hatred still burns within her. But Bianca simply squeezes his hand, her voice steady as she declares that even if she despised him, she could never abandon a soul standing on the edge of the abyss. A realization strikes our protagonist like lightning. She never actually denied that she dislikes him. She simply chose duty over emotion. He analyzes her character, noting that Bianca is the type to charge forward once her mind is made up. However, she is completely mistaken about the reality of his situation. Seeing that she won't hand over the curse willingly, our main character decides to take matters into his own hands. He prepares to steal it secretly using his unique ability. With focus, he activates the lockboard technique, aiming the arcane skill directly at the unsuspecting young woman. Purple energy surges from him, enveloping her hands in a spectral glow as he prepares to extract the curse from her very being. But suddenly, a system alert flashes, an unlock condition triggers, and the energy ricochets back to the boy, catching him completely off guard. The first requirement to break the seal is revealed. The system demands the impossible. He must become true friends with Bianca. The young master realizes this is a catastrophe. It is a double lock mechanism. And because this is a birth curse, the magic has fused entirely with her body. He grinds his teeth, finding the condition of becoming friends with the future white demon even more difficult than the prospect of becoming her fiancé. Since Bianca currently possesses zero emotions and shows interest in nothing, our protagonist understands the stakes. If he lets her return home now, her transformation into the catastrophic white demon will be accelerated. He resolves to keep her close by his side, biding his time for the perfect chance to shatter the seal. His mind races with the calculated plan. If he can prevent her from becoming the white demon while also obtaining the curse for himself, he solves two massive problems with one move. For now, the best strategy is deception. He flashes a charming smile, telling her he is overjoyed by the news and would love to see his fiancée more often. The girl, however, remains pragmatic. She corrects him instantly, stating she must first consult her father before making any decisions about returning. As he watches her walk away, he runs the numbers in his head. He calculates it will take at least a month for the bureaucracy to clear and for her to return. Perfect. He decides to utilize this 1 month window to devour every secret martial arts manual he can find. Things are about to get intense. However, the very next day at Xiang Hall, a carriage pulls up. A man begins unloading heavy boxes right in front of the mansion entrance. Our protagonist watches the commotion, confused by the sudden activity. Suddenly, a familiar, stoic voice calls out his name. It is Bianca. She casually reveals she has decided to move into Xiang Hall starting today, adding that she looks forward to the time they will spend together. The boy is thunderstruck. He stands there in total shock, unable to believe she expedited the process to move in immediately. From that chaotic beginning, time begins to flow, and their awkward cohabitation officially commences. We cut to a peaceful scene of Bianca in a deep slumber. Our protagonist wakes up, only to find her sleeping soundly right beside him in bed again. Stifling a yawn, he tries to shake her awake, warning her that the servants will get the absolute wrong idea if they find her there. The girl wakes up and, with the utmost naturalness, simply says good morning. She asks what he's doing there, to which the boy retorts that he should be asking her that very question. Despite these comical interruptions, our protagonist maintains his grind. He continues his intense training, meditating and concentrating his spiritual energy to reach new heights of power. Our protagonist reflects on the journey, noting that a few months have already flown by since he started living under the same roof as Bianca. His mind drifts back to that fateful day she arrived at the mansion, dropping the bombshell that she would be living there permanently. He remembers his sheer disbelief. When he questioned her, she simply confirmed that her family gave permission immediately, without a single objection. A shadow of worry crosses our protagonist's face. He finds it unsettling that she is only 12 years old, yet sent to live so far from her kin. He speculates that perhaps her complete lack of emotions makes her indifferent to the loneliness that would crush a normal child. Regardless, he views this proximity as a golden opportunity. He will use this time to befriend her and finally break the lock on the curse. Seasons change, and the year draws to a close. This signals that the opening of a vital institution is approaching fast. The Lin Academy, created by the four great kingdoms and the Empire. It is designed to train elite talents capable of fighting the world erosion, accepting students from 15 to 20 years old. In his previous life, this academy was the breeding ground for several legendary figures. It produced the members of the Blue Sky generation, warriors with godlike abilities. The mere memory of those arrogant scoundrels fills him with a blazing rage and frustration, but he quickly composes himself. A sinister smirk plays on his lips as he realizes that, since he knows their weaknesses, he holds the upper hand. He plans to mercilessly steal their abilities. When he finally enrolls in the academy, he intends to take everything they have. He does the mental math. He will turn 14 next year, giving him 1 full year before enrollment. He needs to get significantly stronger by then to execute his plan. However, a wall stands in his way. During his recent training, he feels his natural talent hitting a hard limit. Doubt creeps in. He wonders if the beginner expert level is the absolute peak he can achieve relying solely on secret manuals. To shatter this barrier, there is only one path. He must quickly steal the Snowdole curse from Bianca and master the extreme blood poison. Our protagonist heads to the living room, only to find Bianca sitting there reading a book. He asks if she was waiting for him again. The girl nods, confirming she cannot leave him alone. The boy sighs internally, thinking that ever since summer, she has been trailing him like a little baby chick. The scene shifts to a hilarious moment where he asks if she intends to follow him into the bathroom, to which she innocently asks if that is forbidden. The young master sighs, wondering when the ice will finally melt. He needs to speed things up and make her see him not just as a fiancé, but as a true friend. Just as he suggests that they head out for some fun, the atmosphere shifts. Oroto interrupts, calling out to him with urgency. The butler bows, presenting an invitation from the Star Sanctuary. Our protagonist frowns, a mask of confusion slipping over his face as the memory eludes him. It turns out the Star Sanctuary isn't just a holy site, but the venue for the Kingdom of Starin's massive annual gala. It is the place where minors and socialites collide to forge alliances and expand their webs of influence. The explanation acts as a key, unlocking the sealed memory within his mind. He finally remembers the event and offers a nod of gratitude to the butler for the intelligence. It makes sense that he forgot. Before his regression, he was a shadow, a recluse rotting away in the Azure Pine mansion with memories as hazy as fog. His eyes sharpen with determination as he realizes that specific man will likely be in attendance. Our protagonist steels his heart. He must attend. He has a vow to honor for Ariado, ensuring the man never threatens his own life again for the sake of his daughter. He informs the butler of his departure, but suddenly, a voice cuts in. Bianca steps forward, declaring that she will accompany him. As the butler bows in acquiescence, the young girl hesitates. She warns him that the wolves at the party will likely bare their fangs and criticize him. The boy agrees with a grim smile, but he counters with his own warning. There is no telling what venom they might spit at her, so he suggests it might be safer if she remains behind. However, the girl stands firm, refusing to retreat. With determination sparkling in her eyes, she declares that shielding her partner is the solemn duty of a fiancé. Our protagonist is caught off guard, his cheeks flushing slightly. He clarifies that he wasn't asking for duty, but desperately wanted to know the feelings hidden in her heart. The young woman falls silent, deep in thought, and the boy notices that same sorrowful gaze from their past. Her mind drifts back, replaying the reel of the last few months. Crash had been behaving strangely. He was abnormally, terrifyingly kind to her. She recalls every small gesture, how he meticulously asked about her meals, accompanied her to the library, and even stood guard so she could rest a little longer. It was a warmth she had never known, a tenderness absent even from her own blood family. His compassion was so overwhelming that the nightmare of their first meeting had all but faded away. Because of this warmth, the young woman admits to herself that the hatred is gone, she does not dislike him anymore, and she will stand by his side. And this time, she is not going as a mere fiancé bound by duty, but of her own free will. The declaration leaves our protagonist completely thunderstruck. Words fail him. He can only stammer, nodding in stunned agreement with her decision. The scene shifts to a carriage rattling toward a majestic seaside castle, prompting whispers about Garu Hall. Inside, the boy scoffs, wondering if they have money to burn renting the region's most famous tourist trap. He then reflects on the true purpose of nobility. They are revered, not for their blood, but because they are the shield that fights back the encroaching world erosion in place of the common folk. But looking at these decadent aristocrats who neglect their training to drown in wine and parties, he sneers, is this really the future of the kingdom of Starin? He doubts there is a single decent soul in the entire Star Sanctuary. The doors swing open, and the herald announces their arrival. Lord Crushwall and Lady Bianca Hardenheart, like vultures, the guests immediately begin to whisper. They sneer at the failure of the wall, family, and pity the wasted beauty of the daughter of the ruler of the North, mocking their engagement. Our protagonist lets the malicious gossip slide off him like water. He simply thinks about how tedious it is to mingle with these plastic, fake nobles. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the noise. A young man notes that someone interesting has finally graced them with their presence. He is lounging on a sofa with two others, and our protagonist's eyes narrow. He realizes that among the trash, there are a few real gems present. The first is Barack Hogma, the tiger boy who would later ascend as the legend of the Blue Sky generation. Beside him sits the Alpha Melia, better known as Magby, and Angst Glazer, the master of the wooden bow. These three would one day rise to become the legendary three heroes of Starin. The boy realizes their interest isn't in him, but in his monster of a sister, Charlotte, in a past event. She had single-handedly crushed everyone who challenged her, spitting that the Star Sanctuary should be renamed a dumpster. She found the gathering so beneath her that she vowed never to return. Our protagonist chuckles, remembering how she bragged about her domination that day. And judging by the tense atmosphere in the hall, he deduces she must have left quite a chaotic scar on this place. At that moment, a gentle tug on his sleeve breaks his trance. Bianca asks him to ignore the whispers, but the boy shakes his head, explaining he was merely lost in thoughts of Charlotte. He realizes that Bianca was also being targeted by the crowd's malice, yet she prioritizes his feelings. With a gentle smile, he pats her head, assuring her that the opinions of sheep do not concern a lion. Our protagonist scans the crowd, his eyes hunting. He wonders when the main attraction will arrive, or if he decided not to show. Suddenly, a hush falls over the room. Every head turns toward the entrance as the air grows heavy. With magnificent fanfare, the herald booms, Lord Darling Danilian. The protagonist smirks, thinking, speak of the devil. And there he stands. We are finally introduced to the weirdo among weirdos, the eccentric lord of the alchemist's castle, Darling Danilian. A dark memory surfaces for our protagonist, a time when his body was rotting, completely consumed by curses. And this young alchemist appeared like a twisted savior. Eyes widening in disbelief, the man leaned in. He wasn't horrified, he was fascinated. He began analyzing the twisted curses with the obsession of a maniac. A twisted grin spread across his face. He declared he would test his erosion curse techniques right then and there. He claimed he could heal the boy, or at least, he wanted to try. The alchemist grabbed him tight. He demanded the boy become his test subject in exchange for a cure. He didn't even wait for an answer, asking if the kid was too weak to even speak. Patience wasn't his strong suit. Without wasting another second, he decided to force the treatment on his own terms. Our protagonist struggled to resist, but the alchemist leaned in closer. Looking like he was about to kiss him, Crash let out a desperate scream, demanding to know what the hell this lunatic was doing. And that was how it began. His first chaotic encounter with the man destined to become a legend. The future greatest alchemy king in the entire world. Back in the present, the alchemist made a spectacular entrance. Girls swooned over his looks, while others whispered that he arrived late on purpose, just to steal the spotlight. Watching from the sidelines, our protagonist just scoffed internally. He knew that Show-Off would never miss a chance to dazzle his peers. Crash turned to Bianca, leading her to the banquet table and telling her to wait there. The girl nodded obediently, happily munching on some figs the boy had grabbed for her. Adjusting his expression, he marched straight toward the celebrity alchemist. The man watched him approach with curiosity, wondering who this bold child was. Deja vu struck him. He realized this was Crushwall. The resemblance to Charlotte was uncanny. The young alchemist's eyes sparkled. He leaned in close, asking if this was Charlotte's little brother. He teased him, asking if he approached because he was mesmerized by his incredible beauty. But our protagonist didn't flinch. He cut straight to the chase. He revealed he knew about the secret investigation into the world eroders. He locked eyes with the alchemist, asking if that caught his attention. The alchemist burst out laughing. He grinned, calling him a provocative little brat. His expression sharpened. He warned that since the boy had piqued his interest, he better be ready for the consequences. He left the room, slapping a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. Now alone in the hall, the atmosphere changed. The alchemist turned to a rack of display weapons, casually asking how old Crash was. He slowly picked up a fine sword. 13, our protagonist replied. The alchemist mused that while he looked like a child, the terrifying aura surrounding him didn't match his age at all. The boy stated coldly that his mind was that of a graduated adult. He didn't have time for games. He wanted to get straight to the point. The alchemist smirked, inviting him to speak his mind. Whoosh! Suddenly, the alchemist hurled a sword at him. Our protagonist caught it on pure reflex, shock painted on his face. There was no time to breathe. The alchemist lunged with a lightning-fast strike. The boy barely managed to raise his blade to block the impact. Clashing steel. Our protagonist demanded to know the meaning of this. The alchemist laughed, explaining he finally met Charlotte's brother and had to test his skills firsthand. Crash grit his teeth, thinking this guy was a total pain in the neck. But the alchemist taunted him, reminding him he had something to say. Sparks flew as they traded heavy blows. Our protagonist tried to talk business amidst the chaos, finally getting serious. As Crash unleashed his true skill, the alchemist was stunned. He wondered how this was possible. Wasn't this kid supposed to be a talentless failure? Our protagonist retorted that looks were deceiving. He trained hellishly every single day, but internally, he knew this was bad. He was forced to use a secret technique against a scholar. Physical force wasn't enough. He decided to attack the man's mind to throw him off balance. He dropped the bombshell. He mentioned the secret research on curse neutralization and offered to help. Dan Fillion froze, completely shocked. The alchemist scoffed, underestimating him. What could a child possibly know about high-level alchemy to offer cooperation? That split second of doubt was all Crash needed. He dashed forward with blinding speed, ending the duel with his blade pressed against the alchemist's neck. With the blade steady, he explained the theory neutralizing the World Eroder's curses by using other curses. He knew that to become a first-class alchemist, though, he absolutely needed to prove this hypothesis was real. The young alchemist sheathed his weapon, intrigued. With a confident smile, our protagonist laid his offer on the table. He would be the key to the research. He revealed his secret ability, stealing curses. The alchemist was floored. Sensing the boy's strange aura, his mind raced. How could a boy branded a skillless failure possess such terrifying power? It clicked. If Crash's words were true, this was the golden ticket. The perfect chance to prove the laws of supply and demand applied to curse neutralization. A greedy, manic grin stretched across his face. He asked what the price was. He even teasingly offered to become the boy's boyfriend. Our protagonist immediately told him to shut up. He laid out the real terms. He would absorb multiple curses in the future, and he needed the alchemist to brew medicine to suppress the side effects. The boy's expression darkened. Stealing abilities wasn't enough. Not even the legendary Blue Sky generation could stop the world's destruction with power alone. That was why a failure like him had no choice but to use all possible means, whether it's medicine or anything else, to get stronger. The alchemist stared at him, surprised. Rumors said the boy was broken, crushed by the constant comparisons to his sister, Charlotte. But the fire in his eyes told a different story. He realized the truth. One was an overwhelming genius, and the other a twisted eccentric. His face flushed with excitement. This was going to be interesting. A spark of amusement lit up the man's eyes as he considered this fascinating pair of siblings. The young alchemist leaned in with a request, which our hero instantly granted. Then came the real question. Are you heading to the newly created Lahan Academy? A ball of dark energy swirled ominously in the protagonist's hand. With a confident smirk, he replied, "Isn't it obvious?" That display of power thrilled the alchemist. His mind raced with greedy thoughts. The academy would be a buffet of legendary skills just waiting for him to steal. "Deal," he declared. He would brew the medicine and anything else required, driven by his obsession with curses and because the seat next to power was always vacant. However, our protagonist had one final crucial request. "Do you know the discoloration disease?" Dan Fillion nodded grimly, confirming it as the incurable plague that turned skin blackish blue before leading to an agonizing death. "Create a cure for it," the boy commanded. The demand struck the genius alchemist like a thunderbolt, leaving him utterly baffled. He scoffed in disbelief. Do you not understand the word incurable? That is impossible, Sapwa, even for a prodigy like me. But our hero held a secret. He knew the timeline of the future, and he knew that this very man was the one destined to solve it. Crush let out a heavy sigh, then clenched his fist. His eyes burned with absolute conviction as he declared, "You can do it." That challenge struck a chord. Hearing such unwavering faith stirred the young alchemist's pride, and he accepted the impossible mission. Knuckles collided as they sealed the deal with a fist bump. "Send word to the Azure Pine Mansion when it is ready," the boy said, and the alchemist promised a personal delivery. But before he could vanish into the night, the boy had a burning question. "Do you like my sister?" he asked bluntly. Dan replied with zero hesitation, his voice dripping with passion. "I absolutely adore Charlotte." The boy pressed on about the earlier boyfriend offer. The young alchemist chuckled, waving a finger. "You are still a child. You wouldn't understand." Then, he leaned in uncomfortably close, whispering the shocking truth. "I also like men." Our protagonist froze, his mind reeling from the revelation. "I don't!" the boy screamed in horror. He scrambled away as the alchemist called out teasingly, "Goodbye, my future lover." Once he was safely far away, memory returned. He finally recalled that the alchemist had always been that kind of person. Composing himself, he returned to the main hall to scan the guests. His expression turned somber as he searched the crowd. Suddenly, his blood ran cold. He spotted Bianca, her wrist trapped in the grip of a stranger. The girl looked terrified, uncomfortable with the man's advances. In desperation, she cried out our protagonist's name. A strange energy flooded her eyes. In a blur of fury, our protagonist launched himself forward, delivering a devastating kick straight to the harasser's face. The sheer force of the kick launches the man through the air like a broken kite. The entire banquet hall freezes, eyes wide with shock as they witness the brutal impact. As he writhes on the ground, whining about the pain, our main character looms over him with a dark expression. He doesn't hold back, accusing the pathetic man of attempting to force himself on his fiancée. With eyes burning like cold fire, the boy demands to know his true intentions. He repeats the question, his voice dripping with a suffocating intensity that makes it clear he will not tolerate any games. Pure terror grips the man as he crumbles under the boy's explosive reaction. Trembling violently, he frantically tries to defend himself, desperate to escape the suffocating pressure. "You're the trash here. How dare you try to..." Terror seized the man as he stammered out his excuse. He was merely obeying the commands of Princess Claudia. The mention of that name, Claudia Stern, caught our protagonist completely off guard. The thug confirmed that the second princess had ordered him to fetch Lady Bianca at all costs. When she resisted, he resorted to violence, claiming the weight of a royal decree justified taking her by force. Our hero's gaze shifted to Bianca, capturing the sheer vulnerability of the moment. She stood there trembling, her eyes wide with the raw panic of the situation. He recognized her instantly as the youngest daughter of the formidable rulers of the North. However, despite her noble bloodline, because of the dark curse she bears, she is despised by the entire nobility. It was deeply suspicious. Why would the princess, who usually only toys with her loyal servants, suddenly summon a shunned outcast like Bianca? However, a cold shiver of suspicion runs through our protagonist. His instincts scream that something about this story is terrifyingly wrong. He watches the princess from the shadows, his sharp eyes narrowing. Something in this picture is wrong, and the pieces of the puzzle just aren't adding up. Suddenly, the invisible thread reveals itself. A devilish, knowing smirk curls his lips as he identifies the true puppet master pulling the strings. It is none other than Kiyomi Inex, the same persistent snake who has been obsessively chasing after his sister. Our protagonist recalls the humiliation at the Star Sanctuary, after Charlotte crushed him. Angst was consumed by a twisted obsession, hating her strength while worshipping the power he could never defeat. Unable to touch her, he targeted her younger brother instead, a truly pathetic and sloppy plan. With a sigh of absolute disdain, he unravels the entire scheme. But the thought that Angst might drag Bianca into his filth sparks a dark rage. He looms over the fallen lackey, a terrifying aura crushing the air around them. He delivers his decree coldly. He will go to the meeting place, but not for the second princess. He is going there to hunt down Angst, The servant is left trembling in total confusion. Our hero adds insult to injury, mocking the fool. You claim to serve the princess, yet you don't even know whose orders you're actually following. Your intuition is garbage. Ignoring the trash on the floor, he turns and gracefully extends a hand to Bianca, inviting her to leave this mess behind. Leaving the stunned servant in the dust, the two walk side by side down the long corridor. Breaking the silence, our protagonist glances at her with a serious expression. Tell me, why did you refuse to go with him? Thanks to the memories of his past life, the identity of the true mastermind was already clear to him. Yet, one detail didn't add up. He couldn't fathom why Bianca, a mere child of 12, would dare to disobey the princess's direct order. The girl simply replies that she stayed because he commanded her to wait, and our protagonist is struck by the purity of her loyalty, a warmth spreading through his chest. With a gentle smile, he praises her devotion, his hand resting softly on her head as they move forward. But their path is blocked at a closed door by the imposing figure of Barak Hogma, the Tiger Boy. The Beastman seems delighted to see him. Our protagonist wastes no time, stating plainly that he is here to see Annex. The Tiger Boy grins, confirming that Annex had left specific orders to let him pass if he arrived. Our protagonist instantly recognizes the threat before him. Barak Hogma is a master of dual-wielding swordsmanship with a chaotic, unpredictable nature, a dangerous variable he would prefer to avoid. However, he realizes that Annex's instructions are a lucky break. It saves him from a messy confrontation with the tiger, so he points toward the door. But Barak steps in his way, his aura flaring. He claims he has been curious about our hero's strength and suggests they settle things right here and now. Our protagonist tries to de-escalate, reminding him that combat is strictly forbidden within the Star Sanctuary, but the Tiger Boy counters, arguing that if he fought Charlotte, the rules clearly don't apply. He sneers, provoking him by saying he looks even weaker than his sister. That name triggers a memory. Our protagonist recalls the intelligence he gathered. Barak had performed better against Charlotte than Annex did, lasting much longer in their duel. Even among experts, the Tiger's skill level is a cut above the rest, fueled by wild combat instincts. Our hero shifts his stance, realizing he cannot meet Annex without first overcoming this beast. He would rather avoid this unnecessary battle, but looking into Barak's predatory eyes, he knows there is no escape. Resigned to the inevitable, he clenches his fist. Challenge accepted. In a flash, the tiger strikes, but our protagonist dodges with supernatural reflexes and snaps back with a powerful counter kick. He stomps the ground, shattering the earth to generate explosive momentum. His eyes burn with overflowing energy as he unleashes a devastating punch, the legendary instantaneous strike. The impact is catastrophic. The Tiger Boys launch backward, slamming into the ground with bone-shaking force. Our protagonist stands tall, the victor of the clash. Sprawled on the floor, Barak groans, complaining that he didn't even get to hold back. Our hero retorts cold and sharp, reminding him that he was the one who begged for this fight. The Tiger Boy scrambles up, adrenaline pumping, demanding to continue, but first, he needs his weapon. Our protagonist stares him down with a chilling smile, blood trickling from his nose. He asks if the beast really thinks he can keep going. Barak looks ready for round 2, but his body betrays him. Confusion washes over the tiger's face as his legs give out. He doesn't understand what just hit him. Our protagonist gazes down from above. Barak collapses completely, defeated by a single blow. Bianca rushes over, demanding to know what kind of magic that was. The boy reveals the truth cold and clear. It is one of the Wallheim family's lost secret arts. The technique is known as the instantaneous strike, a forbidden martial art created by the family's renegades. It is designed to unleash maximum destructive power at point-blank range. This was the sole technique recovered from the ashes of Omatsu Hall after it was burned to the ground. And thanks to this power, Cash has survived countless situations where death seemed certain. He explains that he was forced to use his strongest secret art because of that impact. Barak won't be standing up anytime soon. Contrary to expectations, the Tiger Boy doesn't rage. He cracks a respect-filled smile, muttering the name Lord Cash, and our protagonist ignores it and signals for them to enter. As the heavy doors creak open, they come face to face with the mastermind. Annex Glazer waits for them, a smug expression plastered on his face. He calls out to his guard dog, but only our protagonist and Bianca stare back in silence, with a smirk. Annex admits he is surprised that Cash managed to defeat his colleague. Our protagonist fires back. He asks if that wasn't the plan all along, leaving the Tiger Boy at the door to test him. He points a finger directly at Annex. He reveals that he knew Annex used the second princess as bait just to lure him here. That is why he came to meet him personally. Annex looks intrigued. He asks how Cash figured it all out. Noting that he seems very different from the rumors, perhaps the gossip about him was wrong, our protagonist confirms the rumors with a dark look. The stories about him being a failure are true, but he warns that if Annex loses to him today, history will be rewritten. A confident smile plays on his lips. The rumors are about to change, because he is going to steal every single one of Annex's abilities. He reiterates that he was a failure in the past, but if he claims victory today, the content of his legend changes forever. Annex remains silent, his confident smile never wavering. He seems to be calculating, analyzing every variable of the situation. With a gaze full of resolve, our protagonist prepares to face his destiny. It is time to fight Annex Glazer. Memories flood his mind. They were together from the academy days all the way to the blue sky generation. Annex was supposed to be an old friend, but he knew the truth deep down. Their friendship was built on a foundation of exploitation. He was only useful to Annex as a tool, and that usefulness ended in the worst possible way. The memory of being thrown from a cliff, falling toward a gaping monster, burns in his mind, He remembers the terror of that moment, realizing his companions were defeated. He had clung to the cliff's edge, begging Annex for salvation, but the boy had hesitated. Annex calculated that if the trap was discovered to be his fault, he would lose his prestigious spot in the blue sky generation. And so, he came to a chilling conclusion. If he was the sole survivor, no one would know his secret. He condemned our protagonist to death, leaving him falling into the abyss. Annex finally drops the mask, revealing the darkness beneath his true motives. He exposes a brewing internal power struggle, declaring that Crash will be the perfect scapegoat to take the fall for the chaos. A cold, calculating smile twists his lips as the final pieces of his scheme lock into place. Since the world already despises our protagonist, pinning the blame on him would be child's play, covering up the incident entirely. With a sickening grin, he thanks Crash for playing the role of a loyal friend right up until the bitter end. Fury and betrayal crash over our protagonist like a tidal wave as he questions if the word friend ever meant anything at all. He roars back, exposing the truth Annex only stayed close to get to Charlotte, leaving him in a daze while she prepared for marriage. Annex's expression darkens, shadows dancing across his face as he confirms that is exactly why he loathes him. He sneers that Crash has zero talent, yet his cursed intuition always manages to sniff out the flaws in everything. The ultimatum is set if Charlotte is truly tying the knot. Their false friendship dies right here and now. Backed into a corner, he turns with a cynical smirk, wondering if this severance was fate's mercy all along. His voice drops to a whisper, noting that Charlotte wouldn't want to attend a funeral and a wedding on the same day. Crash spits out one final insult scumbag, but his stamina fails, and his fingers slip from the cliff's treacherous edge. Plummeting into the abyss, he accepts his demise until Arthur swoops in from nowhere, catching him just in time. And in that heart-stopping moment, an unlikely alliance was forged in the fires of survival. But snapping back to reality, our protagonist realizes that rescue was merely the prologue to a new tragedy. Meanwhile, Annex seethes at the memory of his expulsion from the Blue Sky generation, his royal ambitions crushed by Arthur's testimony. A smug grin returns as he notes that Crash's defiant attitude mirrors Charlotte's, proving that some things never change. Crash steps protectively in front of Bianca, his voice dripping with ice as he commands Annex to shut his mouth. He warns him not to speak his sister's name so casually, challenging the comparison with cold fury. The air explodes with power. A purple aura erupts from our protagonist as he charges toward Annex, thirsty for combat. Crash embraces the comparison, admitting he shares his sister's fiery spirit, the kind that never backs down from a brawl. Annex stands his ground, watching the approach with the confident smirk of a predator who has already won. Crash launches a devastating kick, but Annex instantly summons a wooden root, blocking the blow with nature's shield. Showing incredible balance, the boy uses the enemy's root as a stepping stone. He propels himself skyward, raining down a thunderous punch that connects squarely with Annex's face, relentless. He follows up with a kick to the ribs, but a sudden counterattack sends him flying backward. Wooden tentacles had lashed out from the shadows, hurling him violently toward the earth. Yet, with cat-like agility, the boy sticks the landing, eyes locked on his target for round 2. Irritation flashes across his face. Annex is proving to be a truly troublesome adversary. Annex mocks his effort, goading him to use a weapon as he unleashes the family's secret art, Moki Tentaziki. It is a legendary technique, infusing plants with aura to manipulate them freely and multiply their regenerative power. Our protagonist crouches, gripping a jagged piece of wood from the dirt, pondering the irony of the request. A challenging smile cuts across his face as he rises, accepting the terms of the duel. If he wants a weapon, he will beat him with his own element. Annex laughs, disbelief coloring his tone. He launches a barrage of wooden spears, daring Crash to defend himself with a measly twig. But the boy moves like a phantom. He weaves through the deadly storm with terrifying agility. Annex freezes in shock, his mind unable to process the impossibility of the dodge. For a genius like Charlotte, perhaps, but for a failure like Crash, he wonders if the boy has awakened the legendary Mind's Eye. With a smirk of absolute dominance, our protagonist declares himself Annex's natural predator. He twists the knife deeper, revealing he has seen these moves 1,000 times before his regression. He throws the taunt back, asking if Annex is obsessed with Charlotte, sending the villain into a blind rage. Patience snaps, a massive green aura explodes from Annex, shaking the very ground beneath them. Sensing catastrophic danger, our protagonist leaps back as the earth splits and rocks form around his enemy. Annex delivers his final warning, summoning the technique's 5th form, the terrifying celestial wood giant. With a smile dripping with malice, he sneered at the boy to be more careful in his next life. He raised his hand, preparing to deliver the final fatal blow. Suddenly, a desperate scream tore through the air. A girl appeared at the door, begging Annex to stop. She knew if that attack hit Crush directly, he wouldn't survive. The celestial wood giant didn't hesitate, launching a devastating punch straight at our protagonist, while the girl screamed a warning about the irreversible consequences. However, our protagonist stood frozen in the eye of the storm. His eyes remained closed, an eerie calm surrounding him as leaves danced around his stillness. In that split second, his mind drifted to the secret library of Atsuken. He recalled the thinnest manual of them all. Its master was an ancestor who swung his sword relentlessly until he was 80 years old. A man with zero talent, who simply repeated basic movements until his final breath. The book, written in his final years, recorded nothing but endless sword swings. But the manual contained a profound secret. It required a state of absolute union between the object and the self, something impossible to achieve with mere training. Yet, having faced death countless times due to his curse, our protagonist saw what others could not. He finally understood the ancestor's true secret art. With clarity piercing his mind, the boy declared, "The sword becomes me, and I become the sword." Suddenly, the branch in his hands erupted with a blinding blue aura. With a single fluid strike, he unleashed a cataclysmic blast of energy. The blade of pure power sliced the giant's massive fist cleanly in half. The impact was devastating. The wood giant was utterly obliterated, leaving only scattered remains. As the dust settled, the boy realized the truth of power was actually quite simple. Witnessing the impossible, the girl stood completely frozen in shock. Even Bianca couldn't hide her astonishment at her fiancé's terrifying hidden power. Annex's jaw dropped, his mind unable to process the reality before him. Through the settling dust, our protagonist called out to him, his voice cold and serious. With a gaze that pierced the soul, our protagonist issued a grim warning: never be arrogant again. He asked one final time if the lesson was understood. Completely broken, Annex collapsed to his knees. Defeated in body and spirit, there was nothing left for him to do. As the last of the wood giant crumbled into debris, the adrenaline faded. Our protagonist felt the weight of the strike, utterly exhausted. Crush could barely stay on his feet, his voice failing him. Seeing this, Bianca rushed forward, catching him in her arms and promising to help. Moments later, the darling Danfilian appeared, sprinting towards the scene. Our protagonist let out a groan of pain, not from the battle, but because Bianca was squeezing the life out of him. The young alchemist warned that she would finish the boy off with that hug. He insisted on taking over, and our protagonist silently agreed in his thoughts. So, darling Danfilian hoisted him up with ease, carrying him on his shoulders. Back in the main hall, Whispers erupted among the guests. They couldn't believe the so-called failure had crushed Annex. The young alchemist noted how quickly the rumors were spreading like wildfire through the hall. He wondered if the boy was bold or just reckless. But one thing was certain when he woke up: Crush would be famous. However, a shadow of worry crossed the alchemist's face. Annex's expression earlier was unsettling. He sensed the noble wouldn't let this slide easily. The boy would surely try something after this humiliation. Facing the unconscious boy, he muttered a warning. "You can't leave this world until you help me with my research." 1 week had passed since the incident at the sanctuary. Our protagonist was already back to his hellish training regime. Standing amidst the debris, he finally felt free from the backlash of that final strike. He reflected on the battle. If he had used the technique continuously to corner Annex, his body would have shattered. He recalled passing out in the carriage the moment the adrenaline faded. He felt a pang of regret. If he hadn't lost consciousness, he could have begun the preparations to steal Annex's ability right then. With a determined glint in his eye, he reviewed his options. There were 2 ways to steal an ability. The first was the standard method of unlocking Blackhood. The second guiding the opponent to devalue their own power. He had chosen the second option for Annex. The characteristic of this method was that it became brutally effective if you could overwhelmingly defeat your opponent. Since the mighty wood giant was destroyed by a single strike, doubt would now plague Annex. The humiliation of losing to a failure he looked down on would spread like ripples in water. The boy would begin to question the worth of his own technique. It might take time, but Crush was certain Annex's recovery ability would eventually belong to him. With that decided, he set his sights on the remaining year before the academy. He would train every single day to surpass the so-called geniuses. But then, an interruption broke his focus. Arioto appeared at the door, calling for young Master Crush. The butler delivered grave news Master Birkin had arrived at the Azure Pine Mansion. Our protagonist sighed, realizing his brother was also at his limit. After all, he had refused his messages twice already. Collapsing onto the sofa, the boy admitted he couldn't delay the inevitable any longer. He told the butler to let him in, and the old man bowed in agreement. While they waited, Bianca approached softly. She offered him a glass of water, and our protagonist thanked her, a hint of awkwardness in the air. The girl scrunches her nose, demanding an explanation. She bluntly tells him he reeks of sweat, leaving the young master flushing with sudden embarrassment. He realizes the cause immediately. Impurities expelled during aura cultivation. He covers his nose, wondering if the stench of the erosion zone has permanently ruined his sense of smell. Bianca looks at him with concern. She asks if he plans to wash up before meeting Master Burrowen, but our protagonist shakes his head. He'll be on the move again soon anyway. Hearing his refusal, the girl's expression shifts. She takes a definitive step back, pleading with him to keep his distance for the sake of her nose. Our protagonist blinks, feigning shock at her attitude. He smirks, asking if she dares to give orders to her future husband. Watching her, a thought crosses his mind. Bianca has grown up fast, and her tongue has gotten even sharper. Suddenly, the girl turns and bolts. Our protagonist laughs and gives chase instantly, shouting that she's dreaming if she thinks she can escape him. As he runs, his gaze softens. To him, Bianca is like a little sister he just wants to tease. But then, a dark thought creeps in. The people from his past life. They would look at his current peaceful self with cold, dead eyes. A vision flashes before him. It is Arthur, the legendary hero, staring him down with a look of utter disapproval. The hero's voice echoes in his skull. "Have you grown soft with peace?" it demands. "Do you really think you can stop the apocalypse acting like a child?" The image of the former hero's blonde hair fluttering in the wind burns in his mind. Our protagonist dwells on that heavy name, Arthur. He doesn't want to admit it, but he knows the truth. Except for his final moments, Arthur was a perfect weapon. A hero who stood at the forefront and never, ever let his guard down. Reality snaps back. A voice cuts through his internal monologue, dripping with arrogance. "What do you think you are doing? Playing house with your fiancée?" Standing there with a look of pure contempt is Baron Wallheim, the third son of the noble Wallheim family. Our protagonist meets his gaze evenly. He replies that even a warrior needs a break sometimes. The response leaves his brother completely stunned. Burrowen freezes. He remembers a cowardly boy who was too terrified to even make eye contact. So why is this trash looking directly into his soul? Recovering his composure, Baroin narrows his eyes. He asks if the ridiculous rumor is true. Did this failure really defeat Anks? Our protagonist ignores the jab and questions the sudden visit. Shouldn't the esteemed third son be busy? Baroin counters with a sneer, asking if he is the one who is truly busy. The conversation shifts to the Reharndhaus Academy. The boy mentions that acceptance is decided purely by examination, ignoring all social status and bloodlines. A sly smile spreads across our protagonist's face. He suggests that in that case, perhaps his confident brother should also start preparing for the entrance exams. The boy is left speechless. Is this good-for-nothing actually provoking him? Baroin's internal fury ignites. The Wallheims are feared by the strongest empire in the world. His family exists in a different dimension of power, and he is a direct descendant. With a twisted sneer, he tells Crush to know his place. Just because he got lucky against Anks doesn't make him strong. To a Wallheim, the idea of studying is a joke. Our protagonist nods along, feigning agreement. He remarks that, from a common person's perspective, worrying about academy acceptance is just inevitable. This casual dismissal strikes a nerve. The older brother's irritation boils over into visible anger. Baroin decides to drop the pleasantries. He reveals the true reason for his presence. He is here to deliver an absolute order. He informs him that they are deploying to Mount Garalack. A world erosion event has occurred. Our protagonist is shocked. Family missions are strictly mandatory, only from the age of 15. A malicious grin stretches across the older brother's face. He tells him not to worry. Baroin claims he will act as his guardian. He leans in, taunting him, asking if the great warrior who defeated Anks is afraid of a little mission like this. Our protagonist sees through the transparent trap instantly. His brother is testing his abilities and trying to keep him under his thumb, but he doesn't flinch. He accepts the mission immediately. Internally, he reasons that the battlefield is where he belongs. He is far more accustomed to world erosion than a peaceful life. Even if it is a trap, he has a dozen plans to escape. As he gears up to leave, Bianca steps forward, her voice trembling. She asks where he's going. Our protagonist turns to her. He warns that he will be gone for a while due to the erosion. With a confusing mix of a stern expression and a slight smile, he commands her not to follow. The girl stares at him, questioning the sudden authority in his voice. Baroin clicks his tongue, irritated by the delay, but our protagonist snaps back, declaring that sending a 13-year-old into an erosion zone is insanity. The boy steps firmly between Baroin and Bianca. He refers to her as his fiancée, asking if a generous brother would really take a 12-year-old girl's words seriously. His look is defiant. His aura is unyielding. He makes it crystal clear that on this point, he will not back down. The older brother grinds his teeth, consumed by pure rage at the audacity of this trash. He scoffs, spinning on his heel and storming off without another word. The tension breaks. The boy gently pats Bianca's head, congratulating her on a job well done. The girl blinks, confused, replying that she didn't actually do anything. He maintains his playful tone. He tells her that if she isn't aware of her help, that makes it even better. The young woman reaches up, placing her hand on his head. Her eyes are serious. She begs him, please, do not pass out again. A genuine smile touches his lips. He agrees to the promise and turns away. As he leaves for the mission, Bianca watches his back, worry etched on her face. We are then given a glimpse into the horror of this world. World erosion. A catastrophic phenomenon where reality itself is invaded and worn away by a foreign dimension. It is a nightmare made real. In some cases, corrupted life forms and giant insects spawn from the earth. In others, the terrain mutates, twisting into something alien and hostile. The danger is absolute. If the erosion progresses far enough, the entire area ceases to exist in our world, transforming completely into a separate, hellish dimension. High upon Mount Garalack, a group of knights observes a terrifying sight. A festering swamp of darkness has suddenly materialized. One knight notes the grim reality, stating this erosion is classified as a 3-star threat, and questions if the purification unit has been deployed. His comrade grimly replies that the cleanup crew won't move a muscle until the dungeon lord is defeated. Confident in their strength, they conclude that a squad of mid-level expert knights should be able to purge this filth without breaking a sweat. They reassure themselves that while Sir Baron might be arrogant, his skills as an advanced expert are undeniable, making the Lord's defeat all but guaranteed. Having arrived at the cursed site, Baron calls out to the protagonist, who responds with military precision. The older noble reveals his true intention. He dragged the boy here specifically to give him some first-hand combat experience. With a mask of innocence, Crush agrees and calls him brother, but internally, he scoffs at the irony. Who is he to lecture me on experience? He admits to himself that he only tolerated his brother's coercion for a single, crucial reason. That reason is to test a provisional method, one that might finally suppress the consuming rage of the extreme blood poison. As they push forward, the knights clash with the first wave of monsters. With a flash of steel, a vile insect is sliced cleanly in two. One knight grumbles as the beasts swarm endlessly, while another shouts a warning to check their flanks. Crush immediately takes command, warning them of the headless beasts. Watch out, even headless. They have teeth. If they bite, your body will swell and burst. Reinforce your skin with aura now. Hearing the authority in his voice, the knights obey without hesitation, wrapping themselves in protective energy. One knight approaches the young master, addressing him as Lord Crush, and asks if he has battled world erosion before. Crush simply plays the part of the child, remarking that he is only 13. It would be strange if he had faced such horrors already. Hearing this, Baron bursts into mocking laughter, wondering why this useless brat acts so confident when they have barely stepped into the danger zone. He recalls his own past, remembering how his pride was shattered into dust the first time he entered an erosion zone at 15. The young regressor looks at him and wonders how this good-for-nothing has the audacity to lecture knights, thinking his brother's past struggles don't even compare to his own history. With a gaze full of cold superiority, Crush turns to the knights and calmly orders them not to compare him to his brother. That simple declaration hits its mark. Baron becomes consumed by fury, grinding his teeth until they nearly crack. He grips his sword hilt until his knuckles turn white, his mind racing with a terrifying hypothetical scenario. What if Crush grows up like Charlotte? What if he surpasses me? The fear that he will become the failure of the Wallheim family strikes terror into his heart. Suddenly, Crush's voice cuts through his spiral of insecurity, calling out brother and snapping him back to reality. Crush informs him that the Lord is near, pointing out how the earth itself is beginning to stain with a sinister red substance. Baron tries to regain his composure, noting that they are lucky since only the Lord seems corrupted, making this easier than his previous battles. But Crush instantly counters that logic. He warns that a solitary 3-star Lord capable of sustaining the corruption alone is a monster of a different caliber. The realization hits the other knights hard, and terror begins to take root in their hearts at the thought of such power. Baron screams at them, demanding they not be intimidated by the ramblings of a mere child. He insists it is just a standard 3-star beast and orders them to slaughter it quickly so they can return home, forcing the knights to fall in line. Crush decides they can handle the distraction without him and focuses on his true objective. Suddenly, his eyes go wide as the pieces fall into place. He can physically see the presence of the world erosion. Thanks to mastering the extreme blood poison, his perception is now razor sharp compared to before his regression. Seizing the moment, he reaches down and scoops up a handful of the cursed red sludge from the earth. Without hesitation, he ingests the filth. Instantly, his eyes turn a glowing demonic red, and a wave of agonizing pain racks his body. Violent coughs rack his frame as he hacks up a large amount of the substance, causing the nearby knights to panic. A knight rushes over, asking if he is wounded, but Crush lies through his teeth, claiming he merely tripped. Baron offers to carry him, but the boy refuses, wiping the blood and sludge from his mouth with a determined look. He realizes that purging the substance was the key. According to the secret manuscript, he first had to merge his own aura with the chaotic erosion energy. He must observe the flow of this power, watching it circulate endlessly like a vast, roaring river within his spiritual core. He waits until the erosion energy is absorbed, his aura gradually swallowed by the massive flow, forming a new, indomitable hue that cannot be overwritten by any force. With eyes now shining a brilliant blood-red crimson, it is clear he has ascended to a terrifying new level of power. He stumbles slightly, his body still adjusting to the surge, wondering if this emptiness is what remains after true rage, because no sane mind could withstand such devastation. Faced with this overwhelming power coursing through him, he makes a fateful decision. He decides the time has finally come to unleash that forbidden technique. We then learn a piece of lost history after the Crash Wallheim seal was thought lost to time. A blind ancestor discovered the hidden archive in the darkness. However, his blindness kept the grimoires out of reach. He had no choice but to seal the secret library, ensuring no cursed successor would ever rise. Yet, in the shadows of the hidden archive, he left a single grimoire behind. This forbidden text was known as the Extreme Blood Poison. Suddenly, a torrential blue aura explodes from our protagonist's body. The raw energy surges outward, flooding the entire chamber. This is no mere magic. It is extrasensory perception forged from pure aura, a sixth sense that allows him to see the world without eyes. He reveals that his range only extends to his fingertips for now, yet even that is enough to perceive his reality with absolute clarity. A triumphant smirk crosses his face. He realizes the atmosphere has shifted. The suffocating erosion that once trapped him has begun to fade. The density of the corruption has weakened. By mastering his sixth sense, the boy has successfully conquered the erosion, but power comes at a price. He wipes a trail of blood from his lips, proof of the immense strain on his body. He knows this victory is fleeting. Absorbing erosion energy is a dangerous gamble that teeters on the edge of uncontrollable rage. To truly master this power, he needs a stabilizer. He needs Bianca's Snowdoll curse to keep the madness at bay. Still, our protagonist clenches his fist in satisfaction. For today, he has successfully suppressed the beast within. Another step taken on his path to supremacy. Watching from a distance, Baroin stands frozen in pure shock. Suddenly, the boy whips his head to the side. Something is wrong. He cannot believe the horror manifesting before him. He stares down a nightmare, a grotesque abomination of rock, wielding an arm tipped with a human face. The face sleeps peacefully for a heartbeat, but then snap, it awakens. Crimson eyes flash with a murderous glow. Flesh and stone twist together. Bizarre bodies fuse into one, unveiling the monster's true, terrifying form. It's the Lord of Erosion. A knight screams in terror. The beast looms over them, its body a tapestry of weeping skulls. The creature unleashes a roar that shatters the air. Even Baroin is paralyzed by the deafening sound. Our protagonist stiffens. Even he cannot mask his shock at the sheer pressure of this entity. It is the thousand-faced demon, a 4-star calamity. Baroin snaps out of his fear, roaring for all units to engage. Steel rings out as swords are drawn. Baroin readies his blade, the steel humming with a brilliant blue light. The energy surges, condensing on the edge. In a flash, the blue aura ignites into a raging inferno. This is his signature ability. Ignis flames engulf his entire being, turning him into an avatar of fire. A knight watches in awe. Lord Baroin's Ignis. It's blinding. Its destructive power is legendary, incinerating all in its path. Our protagonist watches cold, recognizing that fire. It is the same technique that severed his arm in his past life. He recalls Baroin's mocking voice about the gap in their power. But that was then. He observes his brother now with new eyes. He whispers the name. Before the regression, his brother was a chaotic, unhinged lunatic. Has he changed? A dark, twisted smile curls the protagonist's lips. He hopes not. He hopes the madness remains. Suddenly, chaos erupts. A knight is struck. His facial features vanish into blank skin. Another howls in agony. It's the face-erasing curse, someone shrieks, their voice cracking with despair. The veteran knights are barely holding back the monster's 8 arms. Rookies have zero chance of survival against such horror. Terror takes hold. They want to run, but Baroin charges the front line. Advance, he commands, cutting through the fear. Like a meteor, he leaps. His flaming sword descends, delivering a devastating fire slash directly onto the beast. Boom! The creature screeches as the burning blade connects, the impact shuddering through its massive frame. Hellfire spreads across its rocky hide. The monster begins to crumble, parts of it turning to ash. Baroin turns to his troops. Do not falter. I will carve the path. His display of raw power ignites a spark of hope in the men. As expected of Lord Baroin, with renewed courage, they plunge back into the fray, following his lead. Amidst the slaughter, Baroin glances sideways. Is that Trash watching this magnificence? But he can't see him anywhere. Baroin scoffs with disdain. Has the good-for-nothing died already? A knight realizes the truth. The boy isn't looking at Baroin. His eyes are locked on the thousand-faced demon. Baroin refocuses on the enemy. Wait, the monster. It is weeping tears of blood. Every skull on its body begins to bleed black ichor. The protagonist narrows his eyes. This is bad. The danger level just skyrocketed. Darkness explodes outward. The monster unleashes a storm of black tentacles. aiming to slaughter them all. Barowen froze, paralyzed by a crushing weight. The sheer spiritual pressure radiating from the creature was suffocating. Instinct screamed at him. He realized he had to exterminate the thousand-faced demon right now, before the anomaly spiraled out of control. Roaring a command, he ordered the knights to concentrate their attacks. In a flash, he unleashed a devastating fire strike intended to incinerate the beast. But the smoke cleared to reveal nothing. Not even a scratch. Barowen's mind raced. Why were his aura-infused attacks useless? There was no time for hesitation. Gathering his strength for a second strike, he bellowed at his men to hold the line, reminding them of their pride as Knights of Wallheim. Silence answered him. The knights stood frozen like statues, completely paralyzed. Was this a curse? But he hadn't even made physical contact. A cold realization struck him like lightning. The anomaly from before wasn't just a glitch. It was a trap. He had been dancing in the palm of the enemy's hand all along. As the truth sank in, the thousand-faced demon locked eyes with him, its gaze dripping with murderous intent. Suddenly, the world shifted. The skies opened up, unleashing a torrential downpour amidst a crashing symphony of thunder and lightning. Amidst the raging storm, a memory surfaced, a moment of absolute despair where he lay broken against the cold earth. Death seemed inevitable. He was certain his life would end here, devoured by the monstrosity hunting him down. The beast loomed over him, razor-sharp claws gleaming in the dark. In his helplessness, he could only scream internally. Why was this happening to him? Disbelief washed over him. Was a warrior's life really destined to be snuffed out so pitifully? Then, a voice echoed in his mind, sharp and mocking. "You idiot," she sneered. "Is this how the so-called strongest of Wallheim meets his end?" The accusations cut deeper than any blade. His younger sister had already surpassed him. He had bluffed, lost the entire Night Order, and now he was just a coward fleeing to save his own skin. "You are a pathetic failure." The voice condemned him. "You deserve to die right here." Reality snapped back as the monster launched its final strike. A scream of pure panic tore from his throat as he raised his arms in a futile attempt to defend himself. Boom! The devastating blow landed squarely, consuming him in an explosion of pain. But just as the Reaper swung his scythe, a shadow intervened. At the very last second, our protagonist swooped in, snatching his brother from the jaws of death. Barowen groaned, regaining consciousness on the wet ground. Through his blurred vision, he squinted, trying to make out the figure standing before him. It was Crash. The boy grinned, relieved his brother was awake, but the older knight was just confused, demanding to know what the family's good-for-nothing was doing there. Our protagonist calmly explained that he had survived and had been watching the entire battle from the shadows. "I saw you get swallowed by the swamp," he said nonchalantly. "That's why I pulled you out and dragged us to safety." The older brother scoffed, claiming he was fine to walk alone, but Crash cut him deep. "How exactly do you plan to walk when your body is so broken you can't even channel a spark of aura?" Flashing a provocative smirk, Crash leaned in. "Are you absolutely sure, dear brother, that you don't need my help?" Barowen ground his teeth, the sound audible even over the rain. The humiliation was agonizing. In a fit of pride, he slapped our protagonist's hand away, roaring that he didn't need charity from an idiot like him. But his bravado vanished in an instant. Terror washed over his face as the reality of their perilous situation set in. Desperate, he stammered, asking if the thousand-faced demon was nearby and how far they were from the battlefield. But our protagonist simply shrugged, replying that he had no idea. Crash deduced the situation coldly. Since they had been walking for miles without escaping, it meant the world erosion had sealed itself around them. Barowen went pale with horror. The implication was clear: there was no exit. The only way out was to slay the monster. He cursed the heavens in pure frustration. Seeing this, our protagonist stepped in, calling him brother in a tone meant to ground him. Then, the boy dropped a bombshell. He revealed that there was a secret finishing art, one taught to him by Charlotte herself. "That's how I fought Annex at the Star Sanctuary," he explained. Barowen's eyes widened in shock. Charlotte possessed a secret art. For a moment, we glimpsed a flicker of the past. It raised the question, did Barowen actually harbor hidden affection for his siblings, born of the same mother as the genius Charlotte? Back in the rain-soaked present, the older brother was skeptical. Could this technique really defeat a monster like that? Our protagonist nodded with absolute certainty. "We will." The boy reasoned that their current path was a dead end. Instead of dodging until they inevitably perished inside the erosion, Wasn't it worth betting everything on one final fight? He extended a hand to help his fallen brother up, adding softly that he understood if Baroin didn't trust him personally. But then, he played his ace card. Even if you don't trust me, he asked, do you at least trust our sister's strength? Baroin was left completely speechless. Defeated by logic, he leaned heavily on his sword to stand. He had to agree. After all, Charlotte was a generational genius. However, the boy's expression darkened. He warned that if this plan failed, they were both dead men. An ominous, dark aura began to swirl around them. Yet, a confident smile cut through the gloom. The plan will not fail, he assured. Crack. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the forest. Something was coming. The two brothers dove behind the bushes, holding their breath. Our protagonist whispered the grim warning, the thousand-faced demon. I was here. Crash turns to his brother with a sharp gaze. He asks if the Ignis is ready, and Baron confirms by summoning a flickering flame in his palm. With the preparations complete, our protagonist declares that the operation begins now. He steps forward, ready to initiate the assault. Suddenly, power explodes from within him. His entire body becomes cloaked in a magnificent blue aura. The world fades away as he closes his eyes. He channels every ounce of his will into the technique. Baroin watches in total disbelief. How can this good-for-nothing possess such absolute focus? The blue energy swirls, wrapping tightly around the protagonist's blade. The brilliant light reflects in Baron's trembling eyes. He realizes with horror that he has never witnessed an aura this pure in his entire life. Memories flood back to the older brother. When Crash proposed combining Ignis with Charlotte's secret art, Baroin had scoffed at the idea. But now the failure has mastered a power Baroin never could. Suddenly, a voice snaps him back to reality. Crash extends his hand. He demands the power of Ignis. Hesitation flickers in the older brother's eyes, but he complies. He summons the flame, and in an instant, the fire leaps onto our protagonist's blade. The energy surges to a critical point. Baroin stands frozen, rendered speechless by the sheer pressure of the boy's power. Crash glances back calmly. He reveals that the plan has changed and Baron no longer needs to buy time. The older brother is left completely stunned. At that moment, Baroin realizes the hard truth. The flames on Crash's sword burn far hotter than his own. With this power, the thousand-faced demon is doomed. The trauma returns. Baroin recalls the massacre of his subordinates. They were wiped out in a heartbeat. All Baroin could do was run like a coward to save himself. A dark realization takes root. If Crash kills the monster that Baroin fled from, who is the real failure here? Doubt gnaws at his pride. Is he actually weaker than the trash of the family? Crash moves with a single, devastating slash. The flaming sword cleaves the creature in two. Baroin's jaw drops, unable to process the sight. Before he can react, a massive fiery explosion engulfs the battlefield, incinerating everything. The dust settles, the chaotic storm vanishes, replaced instantly by a calm, sunny sky. A voice cuts through the silence. Crash emerges from the smoke, his hair still dancing with embers, and announces the end of the battle. Baroin forces a stiff, unnatural smile. He tries to play it cool, remarking that it looked too easy. But the smile twists into a bitter snarl. He grips his sword, eyes burning with pure hatred. He screams for the good-for-nothing to die. A cowardly strike from behind, but Crash spins around just in time, blocking the blade with ease. Our protagonist looks at him, seemingly confused by this sudden betrayal. Baroin tries to summon fire, but nothing happens. Panic sets in. Crash smiles sinisterly as a dark purple aura erupts from his blade. Crash thanks his brother for never changing. Suddenly, a system window materializes, revealing the conditions to steal Baroin's power. Condition 1. The user must voluntarily entrust a piece of Ignis to the target. Condition 2. Admit the target is superior. And finally, the total collapse of the user's pride. Crash drives a heavy fist into his brother's gut. He reveals the truth. The moment the attack landed, Ignis became his. The demon's corpse smolders in the background as a scream of agony echoes across the wasteland. Baroin lies broken on the ground. Crash stands over him, clutching the monster's core, and coldly speaks his brother's name. Crash sighs. He admits that in the beginning, he truly hoped they could be a real family. A memory surfaces, a young, weeping Crash on the ground, while a cruel young Baroin mocks him to stop acting pathetic. But wishes are just that, wishes. Crash reveals that Dream is dead. Back in reality, Cold steel presses against Barone's neck. Crash declares that this outcome is the fruit of his brother's own hostility. He admits he held onto a sliver of hope for recognition, but looking down at the traitor, he realizes that option never existed. Barone writhes in agony. Crash watches void of empathy and asks a simple question: does it hurt? He points to his own scars, the arm and face Barone once burned. He writhed in the same pain back then. With a brutal kick, he sends his brother flying. The boy stands motionless. He stares at his brother's crumpled form with eyes dead as ice. A dry, bitter laugh escapes his lips. He gazes up at the clear blue sky and remarks ironically on the beautiful weather. Meanwhile, chaos erupts at the Wallheim estate. Shocking news spreads like wildfire. The Knightly Order has been annihilated. Reports confirm the worst. The erosion levels spiked to 5 stars, a catastrophe requiring elite experts to survive. Amidst the somber funeral, whispers drifted through the air like poison. The guests murmured that without Lord Barone's noble sacrifice, Cross would never have escaped with his life. Hearing these words, Barone's personal butler trembled with suppressed fury. Rage exploded within him as he questioned how the family failure was the only one to crawl back alive. But the head butler of House Wallheim stepped in, his voice cutting through the tension. He sternly warned the man to watch his sharp tongue. He reminded the servant that this survivor was the beloved brother Lord Barone had protected with his very life. He insisted they must not let Barone's honorable departure be in vain. Meanwhile, our protagonist turned his back on the commotion, walking away in heavy silence. A cold thought crossed his mind. Since everyone had swallowed his testimony without question, he likely had no need to worry about suspicion anymore. The boy reflected on the dark truth. Thanks to his brother's death, he had achieved substantial, game-changing results from that cursed expedition. Now, he could wield the extreme blood poison. Furthermore, he had confirmed that his sixth sense allowed him to perfectly control the berserk rage the technique provoked. And that wasn't all. Through the power of Ignis, he had successfully unlocked the legendary Black Flame. Ignis was an ability capable of incinerating anything in existence. By applying it to the world erosion, the effectiveness had far surpassed even his own calculations. The Black Flame had evolved into a terrifying trump card. With his power secured, the only loose end at the main house was the investigation into the abnormal phenomenon at the erosion site. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed against his door. Our protagonist granted permission to enter, his mind racing. He calculated that at this point, they likely still hadn't identified the true cause of the anomaly. We then discovered the truth of World Eridor. Its main body lies submerged in an eternal, unending dream. It is an entity blind to reality, able to perceive the world only through the eyes of its servant, the undead. Assessing the situation, he realized something critical. If their activities had already begun, he might encounter the undead's lackey far sooner than he anticipated. But in that moment, a woman's voice pierced the air. She greeted him with a bow, calling out to Lord Cross. We discover this is Sapphira, a 4th-class investigator from the World Erosion Investigation Team. She stated calmly that she had been waiting for him. In that instant, our protagonist's eyes narrowed. He spotted a distinctive black star mark etched onto her neck. Internal shock rattled him. He never imagined finding one of them so quickly. A dry, half-hearted laugh escaped his lips, leaving the investigator visibly confused. Wasting no time, he dropped the act. He exposed her identity as an undead and bluntly stated that he wanted to make a deal. With a confident smirk, our protagonist pointed a finger directly at her. He made a bold declaration he would erase her cursed immortality. A sinister smile twisted her lips as she asked if he was, by chance, a regressor. Her true form unfurled, and she remarked that while she sought something else, she never expected to snare such rare prey. We then learn her true identity. She is the undead, the Crimson Garden of August. Memories flooded back to our protagonist. Before his regression, he had attempted to steal this undead's immortality under Arthur's orders, only to meet with failure. Back then, they discovered a crucial weakness. If successful, the undead would be pushed to its absolute limit. It would be forced to focus solely on regenerating its physical body, losing all control over its subordinates. In that past life, an investigator had reflected on the creature. The undead only maintained so many subordinates because its main body was bound by a curse, leading her to feel pity for it. Another girl, however, snapped back. She questioned what part of that monster deserved pity. reminding her of the suffering caused when it raised the erosion zone's level. The girl lashed out, telling her to stop acting like a righteous saint. The compassionate one stammered, trying to apologize and insisting that wasn't her intention. Arthur cut in, declaring the undead problem resolved and ordering them to cease their senseless bickering. Meanwhile, the undead itself lamented its predicament. Turning to our protagonist in that past life, the creature mocked him, saying it was a shame he failed to steal its immortality. The boy had laughed in agreement, but the undead added a chilling prophecy: even if the boy were reborn, success would remain impossible. The lock's condition required one to be stronger than the undead itself, a practically impossible feat for a mere human. Snapping back to reality, our protagonist locked eyes with her. He questioned exactly what made her think he was a regressor. The investigator explained her logic. The moment a mere child proposed such an audacious deal, she knew it was impossible unless he had lived through this before. She accused him of being nothing more than a regressor trapped in the gears of time. She taunted that he could never defeat an existence that transcends time itself, ordering him to drop the charade. But our protagonist stood firm, stating calmly that it was no lie. Suddenly, a bizarre purple hand with a gaping mouth materialized before him. Immediately, he launched his ability. The woman froze in shock, realizing the technique could steal even immortality, and recognized the terrifying power of the Blackhood. Faced with this overwhelming power, the investigator clenched her fist, seemingly reaching a profound decision. We then discovered the tragic truth: she had continued to raise the level of world erosion for one purpose: to find someone capable of ending her eternal life. With a look of pure admiration, she realized her wait was over. The one who could steal the curse of immortality had finally appeared. And so, with hope in her eyes, she asked the question that would seal their fate. What are the terms of the deal? The protagonist laid his cards on the table, revealing his grand ambition: to forge a path to absolute strength. He demanded her cooperation. His ability was bound by a strict restriction. It would only awaken if his power surpassed hers. A knowing smile graced the woman's lips. She understood his hidden intent immediately. He was begging to become her disciple, to finally escape the curse of immortality. She was prepared to sell her very soul. Crimson light flooded her gaze as her eyes glowed like fresh blood. With a terrifying presence, she agreed to the dark pact. Her true form erupted forth. Shaking the atmosphere, she, the legendary Crimson Garden of August, made a vow to carve him into the undisputed strongest man in existence. Our protagonist stood in awe of the catastrophe before him. The sheer weight of her aura was suffocating, crushing down on him. And the terrifying part, this wasn't even her true physical body. A realization sparked within him. With a monster like her by his side, his ascension was guaranteed. He would shatter his limits and become stronger than ever before. He clenched his fist until his knuckles turned white. Even if he had to borrow the twisted power of an Eridor, he didn't care. He would halt the world erosion at any cost. We then delve into the laws of this world. A specific skill is a singular miracle, a unique technique destined for only one soul in existence. Following this divine providence, the regression skill had reverted to the Arthur of this timeline. This meant Crash had lost his safety net. He could never turn back time on his own again. The reality was grim. If the world met its end in this timeline, so would he. His existence was now tied to the fate of a crumbling world. With his life on the line, he turned to the investigator. He told her he was counting on her guidance from now on, casually tossing her the nickname, Crim. She blinked in confusion at the strange moniker. Irritation flashed across her face as she corrected him sharply, stating that her name was Crush. She grabbed his face, squeezing tight. She roared at him to address her properly as master. Ignoring her tantrum, he walked away, relieved that he could finally return home. The investigator tilted her head, confused. Was this not his home? He replied coldly that he hadn't stepped foot in that place for years. It had been so long. The faces of his own parents had faded from his memory. Suddenly, a shadowed figure appeared. A hooded woman blocked his path, announcing that her lady demanded his presence. The boy paused, surprised by the sudden summons. Had his mother finally taken an interest? Perhaps the rumors of his transformation had reached the Azure Pine Mansion at last. It was suspicious. After all, she had never once bothered to show her face at the mansion before now. The hooded woman confirmed his suspicions, but dropped a bombshell. The master of the house had returned from the Forbidden Region. Our protagonist stood frozen, completely shocked that his father wanted an audience. His mind raced as he thought of the man he called father. That man was in existence who had ascended to the realm of a demigod. Perhaps he had sensed a shift in destiny through the movement of the stars. The messenger continued with her ultimatum. He was ordered to reside in the main house immediately. This was the absolute command from Lady Area. But our protagonist scoffed internally. He couldn't afford to waste time rotting away idly in the main house. He had Bianca waiting for him, and a mountain of critical tasks that required his immediate attention. Sharp as ever, he realized the truth. The instruction to spend the night didn't come from the demigod. It was a fabrication. He made his choice instantly. He announced he was leaving, declaring he would only return if his father summoned him personally, leaving the investigator and the hooded woman speechless. A provocative smile played on his lips. He added that if his father wanted to talk, he could come visit him instead. With that bold declaration, he and the investigator vanished into the carriage. The scene shifts, revealing a majestic city with a towering castle at its heart, surrounded by a sprawling, ancient forest. Inside the carriage, our protagonist stretched his limbs, savoring the freedom. He had absolutely no intention of returning to that suffocating main house anytime soon. Suddenly, chaos erupted. The investigator, now in her demon form, began banging furiously on the carriage window. She screamed at him, calling him a rude disciple and demanding he open the door this instant. Startled, he questioned her bizarre, flashy colors. She scoffed, telling him not to worry. In a puff of magic, she transformed into a sleek black crow, asking for his opinion. He smirked, replying that the black color matched her wicked heart perfectly. She immediately squawked back, calling him an idiot. Curiosity took over, and he asked about the location of her true main body. She snapped back, annoyed. He was asking questions he already knew the answers to, knowing full well her body was sealed. She cursed him as a disagreeable regressor. A shadow crossed his mind. The world thought he was the chosen one, swole, but Arthur was the true regressor. He was just an anomaly, an imperfect being who had borrowed the ability. But there was no need to explain these complexities to Krim. Finally, the carriage rolled to a halt at their destination. As he stepped out, he issued a warning. There was a delicate white-haired girl in the Azure Pine mansion. He sternly asked the demon to be gentle with her. The investigator tilted her head, confused by his concern. Who was this mysterious girl? Suddenly, Bianca burst out the door wearing a ridiculous chick costume, welcoming Crash home. Our protagonist slowly turned to Krim, asking if she just witnessed that madness. Just then, the butler Ariota came rushing out. He called for young Master Crash, worriedly asking if there had been trouble during his journey. The butler handed him an urgent letter from Lord Darling. The boy let out a heavy sigh as he took the envelope. It was good news. The alchemist announced the cure for the discoloration disease was ready. He claimed he brewed it in a flash, fueled by his constant thoughts of Crash. Our protagonist rubbed his temples. People said the world was full of eccentrics, but this was getting out of hand. He turned to the butler with a serious expression. He gave strict orders regarding a man named Darling Danilian. If that man appeared, he was to be treated with the utmost royal hospitality. That eccentric alchemist was destined to become his greatest benefactor. The elder nods in agreement, but suddenly, the butler interjects with urgent news. Lady Bianca has been consumed by worry this entire time. Arioto confirms the gravity of the situation. He reveals that the moment the report arrived stating the young master was trapped within the erosion, she attempted to storm the main house herself just to find him. Our protagonist feels a warm ache in his chest at her sheer devotion. It dawns on him that he hasn't checked Bianca's status window recently. Moved by her concern, he decides to inspect her lock. The first condition was simple: become friends with Bianca. To his absolute shock, the system chimes the unlock is successfully complete. The boy stands there, utterly dumbfounded. Against all odds, Bianca's first seal has finally been broken. The girl, however, remains oblivious to the system messages. She tilts her head, innocently asking if there is something on her face. Flustered, he stammers a denial. He quickly pivots, introducing his new companion. As she picks up the black bird, he reveals its name is Krim. She crushes the bird in a tight embrace. Her eyes sparkle as she whispers that it feels as soft as fresh cream. And just like that, a revelation strikes our protagonist. Beneath that cold exterior, Bianca has a soft spot for animals. He swiftly changes the subject, but his mind races. How in the world will he unlock the second seal? The condition is daunting, become the most important person to Bianca. He analyzes the criteria. An important person usually implies a parent, a child, a best friend, or a lover. Given their engagement, the final option seems the most inevitable. Meanwhile, Bianca tries to snatch the crow again, while the poor bird looks absolutely terrified. The young lady, however, shows zero mercy. She is determined to cuddle that bird. Our hero sighs internally. Becoming the lover of the emotionless Bianca was never part of the original timeline. Plus, as a mental adult, the idea of courting a 12-year-old gives him a headache. The investigator, watching from a safe distance, chimes in with her observation. It seems the white-haired girl took a liking to her, considering she refused to let go. Our protagonist agrees he certainly caught her attention. As darkness falls, Krim summons Crash. The boy asks what is happening. The investigator reveals her true intent. She wishes to test his mettle. She orders him to the training grounds, and terror instantly grips our protagonist's heart. Moments later, the boy is face planted in the dirt, utterly defeated. Krim looks down at him, sighing at how disappointing he truly is. She questions if this pathetic display is the limit of a regressor's talent. Our protagonist grits his teeth, reminding her that he already admitted to being a failure. The investigator scoffs. He may have clawed his way here using secret arts and memories from the future. But in 5 years, a true genius will rise and leave all his desperate hard work choking in the dust. However, she reveals a twist. That logic only applies to raw human talent, and before her, talent means absolutely nothing. She explains the path to true power. If he was born without talent, the answer is simple: he must steal it from everyone else. She declares she will drag him to the peak. He was destined to rot at the bottom of the well for eternity. But she will force him to conquer the heavens, reaching far above the clouds. Finally, she issues the ultimate challenge: steal even my immortality. Our protagonist clenches his fist, fire lighting his eyes. He doesn't need to be told twice. Several days later, the silence is broken. Someone comes sprinting toward them, shouting with unrestrained joy. It is none other than Darling Danilian. He asks if he made Crash wait long, but our protagonist just frowns, wondering when exactly they became dears. Ignoring the pleasantries, the boy asks for the item. With a triumphant grin, the alchemist produces a vial. It is finally complete. He preens, asking if he isn't a total genius. Surprisingly, our protagonist agrees without hesitation. The man has always been a prodigy. The young alchemist lets out a satisfied cackle at the praise and tackles Crash into a suffocating hug. Crash desperately tells him to knock it off. Darling Danilian then turns serious. He has news. He heard that Angst has undergone a change. He explains that Angst had given up after suffering a crushing defeat against Charlotte. He had stopped training entirely. But the rumors say he is back. After the incident at the Star Sanctuary, he has resumed his training with terrifying zeal. Our protagonist feels a twinge of embarrassment. To think that even a future traitor like him was inspired by his actions. The investigator interjects. She assumed the kingdom of Starin was worthless aside from its walls. But this situation, it is perfect. Since his body is fragile, she planned to use spirit elixirs anyway. A malicious smile spreads across her beak. She suggests he use the man born under the Star of Alchemy, make him create the spirit elixirs. We then learn the truth. Spirit elixirs are miraculous medicines. Upon consumption, they explosively enhance physical capabilities and aura. However, they are astronomically expensive. Their secret manufacturing arts are guarded jealously by noble families. They are treasures reserved for the privileged few. Our protagonist sighs, thinking such items were completely out of his leagues. But the investigator drops a bombshell. She knows the ancient mixing formula. All he needs to do is pass the knowledge to the alchemist. A grin forms on our protagonist's face. He calls out to Darling Danilian. He has one final request for him. The alchemist didn't mince words, complaining loudly that he had just kicked the boy out. But the boy cut through the noise with a single demand: make me a spirit elixir. The young genius froze in shock. Did the annex rumors get to your head? He scoffed, questioning how the boy planned to pay for the materials when the Wallheim clan wouldn't spare a single copper for him. Don't worry about the cost, our protagonist replied calmly. Internally, he calculated the odds. With the forbidden knowledge from his past life, anything was possible. The investigator whispered the ancient recipe into his ear, Repeat after me." He began to recite the complex ingredients of the legendary elixir. The room fell silent. The alchemist just stared, his mind racing to process the impossible combination. Shock turned to obsession. He grabbed his notebook, scribbling furiously. The synergy. How do these ingredients even bind? "Where did you get this?" he demanded, eyes wide with amazement. Crash kept his expression neutral. "It is a secret mixing technique passed down through the Wallheim lineage." Darling Danfelian's scientific curiosity was piqued. "I want to try it," he admitted, "but sourcing these materials is a nightmare." He shook his head grimly. "Even with my connections, I can't obtain the white snow solar fungus. And the golden dragon herb is even worse. The fungus only grows in Hardenheart, but the erosion there makes the mountains a death trap." Our protagonist didn't flinch. "I'll handle the fungus. My fiance's family rules Hardenheart. I'll ask her." With one problem solved, the alchemist raised a finger. "That leaves the golden dragon herb. It's a phantom herb found only near golden dragon nests deep within the Empire. We could try a black market dealer. But if the Imperial Guards catch us, we're dead." The investigator chimed in with a better idea. "The Elgrin Empire is hosting a juvenile martial arts tournament for fighters under 15. First place prize, the golden dragon herb." Our protagonist frowned, weighing the options carefully. "No," he decided. "If that's the only legitimate way, we have no choice but to risk the black market." But Darling Danfelian smirked. "For a boy like you, I have a much more creative solution." Crash rubbed his temples, exasperated. "I'm a Wallheim. The Empire and the Academy are political enemies. If I enter that tournament, it starts a war." With a gaze full of mischievous conviction, the young alchemist grinned. "Do you take me for a fool? I have a plan." He shoved a vial of bubbling pink liquid into Crash's hand. "Drink." The boy stared at the suspicious liquid. "What the hell is this? Will it make me invisible?" He downed the potion and immediately bent double. A scream of agonizing pain tore from his throat. Bone structure shifted. Features softened. In a flash of light, his body completely transformed into that of a girl. Danfelian nodded with satisfaction. "Anyone can enter the tournament. As long as they don't know it's you, the politics don't matter. Just become a girl and win." He grabbed the transformed Crash in a tight hug. Our protagonist screamed in horror, thrashing around. "Change me back right now." The investigator, however, didn't intervene. She simply watched the chaos unfold with a look of absolute judgment. The joke ended abruptly. Crash's eyes glowed a menacing crimson. A terrifying dark aura exploded from his small form. "Are you mocking me?" The killing intent was real. The young alchemist turned pale, trembling in terror as he stammered out a desperate apology.